Good evening, and welcome to the January 23rd meeting of the Livermore City Council. I now call the council meeting to order. And let's do a roll call on this, just to remind everybody.
Okay, Councilmember Carlin.
Here.
Councilmember Coomer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Spadowski.
Here.
Councilmember Warner. Here. And Mayor Marchand.
Here. Great, thank you very much. Ask if you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask the city attorney if there was any reportable action taken in the closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there was no reportable action taken. However, the council did direct me as the city attorney to continue my efforts to reach out to the plaintiffs in the litigation known as County of Alameda, Connolly Ranch, Inc., Friends of Tesla Park et al., and Spraldeff versus the California Department of Parks and Recreation et al., Sacramento County case numbers 34-2016- and there's a series of them, 8000-2496, 8000-2495, 8000-2494, and 8000-2492 to determine if there's anything that the city can do to support their efforts. And then I'm to return to the council in closed session again in March to determine whether there's any action to be taken. And also, you asked me to articulate that no other litigation deadlines for those cases will expire between today and the date this matter returns to the council in March. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Also, at this point, I'd like to tell everyone that because I think a lot of the people here are here to speak on item 6.01, I'm going to flip 6.01 and 5.01, so we will consider 6.01 first and then 5.01 afterward. So that way we can get everybody here and get through that a little bit sooner. So we'll be considering 6.01 first and then later 5.01. With that, proclamations and presentations, the Human Services Commission annual update, and we have Shirley Ramirez here. So what's going on with the Human Services Commission?
All good stuff.
Good.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I'm Shirley Ramirez, current Commissioner on the Housing and Human Services Commission. I'm here tonight to provide the City Council a brief report on the Housing Human Services activities for fiscal year 2015 and 2016. At the August Commission meeting, all agencies funded through the City's Housing and Human Service Grant Program process made a public presentation to the Commission detailing their accomplishments for the prior fiscal year. Approximately 18 agencies provided presentations to the Commission. Accomplishments reported include ABODE's Rapid Housing First program, which targets the homeless and those at risk of homelessness, assisted 9 Livermore individuals by providing rental assistance and case management services. Meals on Wheels for Seniors provided over 16,000 meals to Livermore's frail and elderly seniors. Seniors receive 2 to 3 meals per week, 52 weeks a year. Calico conducted child abuse forensic interviews and provided guidance and referral services to approximately 50 children. Echo Housing provided fair housing counseling and landlord-tenant dispute resolution services to over 300 Livermore residents. And Krill provided peer counseling, independent living skills, housing search assistance, and travel training to 79 disabled Livermore residents. These are just a few types of services that funded agencies provided to our Livermore residents. Additionally, these funded agencies have organizational missions that are consistent with the established city priorities and goals as described in the 2015 to 2019 Consolidated Plan, which is to support and develop a continuum of housing resources that increase access to low-income, seniors, disabled, and homeless persons, to provide assistance to all persons or households who are on the verge of becoming homeless and those who are currently experiencing homelessness, to support initiatives that increase a low-income individual's ability to increase their household income, to improve community health and access to basic and specialty care, including dental and optometry care, substance abuse, behavioral and mental health care services, especially for low-income and underinsured residents, to foster and encourage innovative programs that meet emerging community needs with emphasis on low-income and underserved populations. A couple other HHS activities include a joint workshop that was held in the City of Pleasanton, Dublin Human Service Commissioners in September this year. Our three commissions discussed how we can continue to work together on projects that affect the Tri-Valley, such as lack of dental clinics serving low-income residents and addressing homelessness. The beginning of the grant process for the fiscal 2017-2018 grant workshops were held December 9th in Pleasanton and December 14th in Livermore. Commissioners are looking forward to reviewing and ranking grant applications for recommended approval by the Council. The Housing and Human Service Commission typically recommends approval of approximately 18 to 20 agencies that implement between 28 and 30 programs. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. You do tremendous work, that agency, and sifting through all of those, the applications. It's a lot of work because there's a lot of great causes out there. Any questions at this point? Questions? Great. Well, thank you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
With that, moving on to the Citizens Forum. These are items that are not on the agenda. The City Council can neither deliberate nor take action on any of these. Ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. So with that, we have Chester Moore, Dave McGuigan, and Rochelle Snedecor. Mr. Moore.
I'm Chester Moore, and I'll waive my time in the interest of expediting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Dave McGuigan, Rochelle Snedecor, Bruce Shore. Mr. McGuigan.
Thank you. Tonight, we're going to talk about the events that actually happened on that afternoon in January. It should not be unsurprising to learn that what actually happened is exactly what you would expect to happen. Instead of doing some unspecified activity, the officer actually began his investigation immediately after the scene was secured at 1503. He interacted with me and the other witnesses. I know this because he said at one point our accounts matched, and then he spent quite a bit of time getting a detailed description of the events, which culminated with my signed statement. I then spent the next 15 minutes or so sitting on the hood of my truck. At that point, I was called over by the officer and a supervisor who had just shown up, and they applied the breathalyzer. I blew just the slimmest of margins under the .08 limit, and upon an investigation of the contents of my pockets, they actually found a small quantity of hydrocodone, and blood tests actually found the presence of hydrocodone in my system as well as alcohol. Given these circumstances, your counsel will tell you there is ample probable cause for an arrest. Clearly, I'm a monster, undeserving of sympathy or a failed trial, at least according to the Livermore police. You see, that's the point. They didn't need to lie. So why did they? Let's consider the process of taking a statement involves the officers being in close proximity for an extended period of time, asking detailed and specific questions. These events do beg the question, if a trained observer interacting over an extended period of time, asking specific questions and evaluating detailed answers, did not perceive any untoward behavior in the person's activities, just how much under the influence are they? This may or may not be a reasonable defense, but I do know the Livermore police went way out of their way to prevent me from using it. They didn't need to lie because in some moral universe it was the only option to hold me accountable. They lied to deny me a fair chance to defend myself. This seems like cheating, doesn't it? Decidedly un-American and definitely illegal. Sadly, they put the interest of getting statistics so they can brag at the conferences above the actual law. How do the police rationalize denying somebody their basic rights to claim and claim to believe in upholding the Constitution? Officer Christian Starr committed deliberate perjury when he testified he didn't talk to me for the first 40 minutes when he actually had my signed statement at that point. The chief has failed to adequately investigate a legitimate complaint because he didn't even attempt to ascertain what the officer was doing for the 40 minutes he's lying about, a breach of his fiduciary responsibilities. You've all stated it's morally wrong for the police to lie and everybody deserves a fair trial. Your chief's actions are directly contrary to those convictions. What are you going to do about it? One brief comment. Mr. Warner, I do believe I owe you an apology. According to your rules, that you're reviewing on the 26th, it is not appropriate for me to be actually talking to you. I should be talking to the mayor and asking my questions to the mayor, and then the mayor can ask Mr. Warner that question and relay the answer back to me. And I can assure you I'll be doing that so that we can, you can pass me his answer back as a note after school, and we can have all sorts of middle school flashback experiences. You might consider that as you're evaluating your procedures next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGuigan. Rochelle Snedecor, Bruce Shore, John Shirley.
Well, Mayor and City Council members, Happy New Year. It's my first one this year. I know you guys have been working hard. We're all hitting the ground running. I'm here tonight, and for many reasons, you'll keep seeing me pop up because this seems to be downtown night, which is great. I thank you for putting them all together in one night. But in this public comment, we have just had our board retreat, and we were happy to see that Bob Warner, Councilmember Warner, has put forward kind of his list of issues that he'd like to see addressed and some focus on as we move forward in 2017 with staff and with City Council and with our downtown business community. We're in alignment with that, which is awesome to start the year with. And we list those as Livermore Park. We heard loud and clear that people want more open space and more fun areas to gather, and we have a spot waiting for some love. So we'd love to see that move forward. Removable shade for Bankhead Plaza, the plaza in front of the Bankhead. Something that keeps us as a multi-service area where we can use it winter, spring, summer, and fall, and isn't permanent, but can be utilized as needed. And the light project. We've already committed to expanding that. LDI helped form that project, putting the twinkly lights in the trees along First Street. We'd like to see J and K brought to life leading into Second Street. This is imperative to help the attraction level, to help us get people to utilize these other areas for parking on Second, on Third, so that they do feel like they're already here. They're in the downtown, and it's a safe and well-lit, comfortable place to work through. And parking lots. Parking lot. We'd love to see that become a true focus as we move forward. Let's get some more structures down there moving forward before we think of all these other wonderful things to add and take care of the parking needs that we have right now. Also looking at residential height, that we can really come up to consensus within this community of what is comfortable and what is feasible. So we do agree with that. We'd love to see that moving forward with discussion so that we know what we want as a community, and we can be fair in reaching out to others to help us reach those goals. My last thing is this last election, both at the national level and the local level, brought us into a new age of social media where fact-checking kind of loses its ability. And we learned two new terms through the national leadership. We've learned fake news. If this person says it, it's fake news. Now, if we say it over here, well, that's just alternative facts. I'm really hoping that as we move forward in this next year, that Livermore becomes kind of an example of the way this country should be moving forward, and that we as a community can come together and do these things honestly, without hidden agenda, and let us help you be a clearinghouse. That if somebody's asking you what's going on with, that we have a centralized place that we all have access to, that is constantly fed the factual information so that we can all be sharing that information. That was quick. Okay, good.
Perfect timing. Very good. Bruce Shore, John Shirley, Bruce Anderson. Mr. Shore.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, the proposed community center meeting hall to be built where the old library now stands abandoned and whose plans were presented to the City Council last year has two major components. First, roughly half of it would be an auditorium layout where the City Council would hold their regular meetings. Second, roughly half would be a large room, partitionable into two rooms, where the various city commissions would meet to do their work and where the city staff meetings would be held. This meeting space would also serve, when needed, as an emergency operations center, or EOC. Now, you might think because we have an EOC in our police department building that such a construction would be a luxury. Not so. Here is what I have learned about our EOC and its proposed replacement. Our city employees must prepare for a variety of calamities. On our behalf, they must prepare for the inevitable earthquakes, for fires and collapsing buildings, for hazardous material spills, for firearm attacks, and many other imaginable catastrophes. It is important that our city deal with such bad scenes as wisely as planning will allow. Our fire chief would be the chief of operations, and our city employees, the police force, the firefighters, the city engineering department, the various safety inspectors, all of these folks must be ready to take action if called upon. If and when such an emergency occurs, many people must work well together in some central location. That is what an EOC is for. Our present EOC is in a small room of the police department. When there's an emergency drill, some 30 people crowd into that cramped and noisy space. Folks from operations, planning, logistics, finance, damage assessment. There will be a policy group, too, the mayor and the city manager and others in positions of responsibility. Try to imagine the noise and confusion when these folks try to manage the details of a real emergency. The new facility will be roughly twice as large and have even more room in the adjacent hallway. In the present EOC, the communications to the outside are restricted by what was available when it was built in the days before Wi-Fi and prolific cell phones. The new design will make use of contemporary technology for communication and active display. The present EOC has very little wall space for maps and event updates. The new design has lots of wall space. And lastly, the new facility, those who deal with informing the public will have a space in the council chamber to make their presentations, an important space as you can imagine. Our community has need for better facilities in which to do its work and better facilities for dealing with emergencies. I urge you to proceed with the steps needed to create this new Civic Center meeting hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shore. Thank you. John Shirley, Bruce Anderson, and Tom Jefferson.
Councilman.
Dr. Shirley.
I'm John Shirley, 4218 Drake Way. That's an old rule. I congratulate the City Council and staff for plans to move our old train station to a new location that can serve travelers at the Wheels and Ace train station. After moving and restoring our historic station, it can resume function again as one of the oldest train stations in California still in service. The station will be open to all who want to visit it. Some citizens don't want to move the station as they do not want to see housing developed on the site where the station is now located. The City Council has not made a decision on how that property or the property that was the Lucky Center will be zoned and developed. Now, that's 2 minutes. I want to talk also about the community, the new community hall. It'll only take a little over a minute, okay? I'm pleased the council and staff have proposed a community meeting hall at the Civic Center. It is proper to build it near the City Hall with good parking and easy access for the city staff, city council, and the public, and many community organizations that will be attending meetings at the new meeting hall. Having an emergency operation and communication center as part of this building is important in the case of earthquakes, major fires, civil disturbance, wars. We had such a center for a long time during the Cold War in the basement of the old fire department on the corner of 3rd and Pine Street. So that is, thank you for your attention to your service. That's all I have to say.
Dr. Shirley, thank you. Bruce Anderson, Tom Jefferson, Jason Bezos.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi there. Fellow aviator, but that's another story. Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you very much for hearing me. The last time I spoke here, I was talking a little bit about traffic safety in Livermore, and because of the time limit, I missed a point, and the point I missed was apparently judges are not enforcing the speed limits unless they do a speed survey and they raise the speed limits, and then it's my understanding that, unfortunately, you're not in plain clothes. It's my understanding that we have three officers that are doing traffic enforcement, and we have a large city. And I know the speeds on 4th Street were increased, I want to say from 25 to 30 and 30 to 35. And we only have 3 officers to support traffic enforcement. Judges say we have to increase the speed limits in order to enforce those laws. We don't have the officers to enforce the laws. The speed limits keep going. Well, people keep driving faster regardless of the speed limit. And I believe since the last time we were here, there was a pedestrian struck in a crosswalk a few blocks from my house. Okay, second piece of information, well, not piece of information, I guess it's just a head-scratching thing. And so far, I understand it's, oh, well. But I noticed in our water bill this month, mine went up by 430% per unit of water sold. It went up from, it was like $3.15 per unit, $3.15 per unit in October to $16.75 this month, $16.75. So, and that's per unit. Now, currently we're in January. This month I only used, or last month, or this, I only used 1 unit of water. So my bill was like $16.75, but apparently this June I can look forward to using this price. I can look to water bills over $200 a month. So if you want my water bill, you can have it. Mayor Marchand, you looked, I want to say you looked a little bit startled when I said that.
I'd be startled. Give me that to the city clerk if you would, please.
So thank you very much for your time. A lot of people here tonight. Livermore reads this Sunday. Thank you.
Now we're doing aviation.
What time is Livermore Reads at the library?
2 p.m. 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
at the time room, and it's on aviation.
And the Storytime Room is that cool one that's kind of like a planetarium in the back. It's got the little dome with the stars. Yes. Okay, very good. Thank you. Tom Jefferson, Jason Bezos, Chuck Eiler.
Hi, I'm Tom Jefferson. Good evening. I'm going to talk today a little bit about Hanson Park and describe a problem which I hope you can solve. Hanson Park, you probably say, where is that?
It's the Rose Garden.
It is a rose garden. It's a city park that's located where Home Street meets First Street. There's a rose garden with about 450 roses. There's a fountain, and there's a structure without walls that covers a log wagon. On Monday, and also it's right across from the exit from Valley Care. Yesterday was, Monday when I was leaving Valley Care, I looked across the street and I saw somebody lying down on either a sleeping bag or, I'm in my car, either a sleeping bag or a mattress in Hanson Park underneath the structure. And I said, looks like somebody's camping. Wednesday, I was back there and I looked around. I did get out of my car and I found a shopping cart with clothes in it out in the rain right next to the structure and a bicycle that was upside down. And I went back, that was in the morning. At 4 p.m. I went back again. The bicycle was upright. Shopping cart was now underneath the structure with the clothes in it. On Saturday afternoon, that was after the Livermore Amador Valley Garden Club pruned the roses. I went back to see how the pruning was. And this time I looked underneath the structure and here are 3 shopping carts with clothes at the log wagon. And I'm thinking, what is this? Who wants to see this junk at the log wagon? Stolen grocery shopping carts, obviously. Today I thought, now what happened just before I came to the meeting? I went back there at 3 p.m. this afternoon. There's now 3 shopping carts containing clothes and other stuff. There are clothes on top of the log wagon. There's an orange lying on the ground. There's a scarf hanging on rows, and the bicycles that I saw on Wednesday is now in pieces on the ground. And I just can't understand why nobody notices this. It's obvious when one drives by that there's junk there. Why don't the police look? The police drive all the time. Whenever they say, oh, something is happening there, nothing happens. Why doesn't this stuff get cleaned up? I mean, who wants to go to a park when you see all this stuff? You feel very uncomfortable. You might say, well, why didn't you call the police about camping? Well, I did on Wednesday. What happened? They act like the monitor. When you see these television commercials about the security guard who says he's not a guard, he's a monitor. He just says, yes, there's a problem. We're getting robbed. I mean, can't something happen? Can't somebody go by, neighborhood preservation or something, and just see what's going on at the park? See that there's something that shouldn't be there? And the park should be a nice place to go, rather than people being uncomfortable going there. Thank you.
You've brought that to the right place, Mr. Jefferson. Thank you. Jason Bezos, Chuck Eiler, and Ian Harlan. Mr. Bezos.
Good evening. There is a historic preservation crisis in downtown Livermore. The downtown specific plan identified 14 structures as national historic resources, including the Flagpole Masonic Building, Scanoni Building, Bank of Italy Independent Building, the historic train depot, the Old City Hall, the Carnegie Library, the Post Office, and the Wagner Winery Building. These 14 National Historic Resources are, quote, protected from demolition and relocation except under very special circumstances under the downtown specific plan. The City Council can, under certain very special circumstances, demolish or relocate them. In August and September of 2016, the Historic Preservation Commission and the City Council approved demolition of the Wagner Winery Building. The HPC simply ignored this section of the downtown specific plan. It did not acknowledge the existence of this policy, let alone make a finding or raise a red flag of concern that the building is, quote, protected from demolition and relocation except under very special circumstances. The HPC did not articulate any very special circumstances or public benefit, making it necessary to allow demolition. And on September 26th last year, the City Council attempted to justify demolition by deeming the building not historically significant and finding the Council did find that demolition was necessary and made a finding, which pleased me. It actually went through the effort to do that. But it said it was because it was a dangerous building and the secondary public benefit would be the increased ability to redevelop the site for residential use. Now, my concern that these so-called public benefits are very malleable, flexible, that just by anyone who claims their building is dangerous, they allow demolition by neglect, or and then they come running here, and then they say, well, I want to put housing there, or zone for housing. That means just about any building, it makes it almost a meaningless, a dead letter, that section of the downtown specific plan. And the City Council, to its credit, to the credit of former Councilmember Gary and Mayor Marchand and Councilmember Warner, did vote to reconsider that vote, so that demolition was held off, so there's a second chance on that. But I'm just here today in part to urge that all decision makers of the city exercise due care in implementing this important historic preservation policy. And the other bit I'll say in the last 40 seconds is last month the city refinanced its bonds for the downtown redevelopment. And there's about $1 million of that which was deemed taxable. And that $1 million, that's a pot of money that could be used for any project in the old downtown redevelopment area. It could be used, for example, for a downtown park or plaza in the super block. And since it's not taxable, there's not that same limitation or strings that are attached for time limits. So I'm just urging for that $1 million there to use that $1 million wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bezos. Chuck Eiler and Ian Harlan. Mr. Eiler.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, City Council, concerned Livermore citizens. I'm Chuck Eiler. I'm a 20-year Livermore resident and a professional artist. And I'm here to talk about the Downtown Arts Career Center again. The proposed Downtown Arts Career Center, to be next to the Bankhead, is still in its forming stages, but is gaining momentum. Since I spoke here at the last council meeting and got the mention in the paper, several interested people have come forward to offer advice and help. Our team is growing. Lauren Haynes, who's here tonight, grew up in Livermore, and she's worked in New York and now works in LA and San Francisco as a set designer. She's moved back to Livermore to open a restaurant downtown with her husband. She expressed her enthusiasm and has offered her help and advice with both the culinary and the visual arts training programs. Our thoughts are in process towards defining the best plan. We welcome ideas and we want to include the entire community. The Arts Career Center's mission, lest you forget, is to be able to help youth develop the skills and the confidence to invent careers in the arts. So far, I've met with some potential funders and existing educational resources. There are many people yet to meet. Here's some of the latest thinking. The Arts Career Center will be located in downtown Livermore, but the programs will be offered to the Tri-Valley for regional collaboration and benefit. There are many existing programs that could share benefits from the school. Sunflower Farms and their architectural training program is a resource for foods to serve. We want to include the influence of local restaurants and also celebrate them. We'd like to have guest chef visit. We'd also like to offer intern services and employee training for businesses. We can offer cooking classes for adults or digital photography or website building, on and on. Suggestions forming for the site downtown include a 2-story theater space for the Performing Arts School with a dance floor, a tiered rooftop terrace for events, as well as an indoor restaurant. We want to take a passion for the arts and give it structure and foundation, functional realities to support the dreams, to make high ideals possible, to make them inevitable. So we're assembling a presentation that will include interviews with community members and a peek at possibilities for the building to bring to the next Livermore Cultural Arts Council meeting February 1st. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Eiler. And finally, last card, Ian Harlan. Carlin, I'm sorry.
It's okay. So, thank you. I'd like to just talk about moving the city forward. Right now, there's lots of vacant property, falling down buildings that the city has been delaying, debating on redeveloping. And, you know, there's lots of competing ideas. They're all good. But at some point, a decision has to be made. We can't go through 15 years of what to do with the downtown parcel and then follow that up with 5 or 10 years about a train station, about a winery. We need to move forward, redevelop, and preserve and make decisions. It can't be, you know, either or. It can't be a search for a perfect solution. Decisions at some point have to be made. They have to be made when it's feasible, when the federal government's willing to help shoulder the cost, when private industry is willing to help make it financially viable. It's highly important that, you know, the city council doesn't delay to the next recession when all of a sudden funding options will be much more limited, and only to have to come pull out another plan when situations change. We've gone through this many times, and, you know, I'm sick and tired of walking past falling buildings and gravel parking lots on my way to downtown. You know, it's been like that for 10 years. At some point, a plan has to be good enough. A building has to either be demolished or preserved, and people have to make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlin. Okay, moving. That's the last of the citizens forum, so I'm going to close that. Moving on to the consent calendar. These are items that are typically routine in nature and are passed with a single motion. However, we do have a couple of items that have piqued the public's interest. I have 4.02 and 4.06. Does any council member wish to pull another item for consideration?
4.05.
Councilmember Warner?
4.05.
4.05, okay. Anything else anybody wishes to pull for consideration?
I was going to pull 4.02, but seeing that we have 2 speaker cards, I'll hold off until, well, I guess it's pulled technically anyway. So.
Yeah, okay, let's...
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, which of the 3 were pulled? 4.02,
4.02, 4.04, 4.05.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to clear some of these, let's go ahead, if I could get a motion for 4.01, 4.03, yeah, and that's it.
All right, I'll move approval of the 2 non-pulled consent calendar items, 4.01 and 4.03.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Carling. Any discussion on the motion? In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay, so we will. Well, first, what is the interest on 4.05? See if we can clear that one. Not hold everybody in suspense.
Sorry, 4.05 on the fire truck is somewhat highly technical, and I would request a briefing as part of the appropriate subcommittee on that before making a decision.
Okay, for the LPFD
Right.
Subcommittee, well, that's you and me.
Right.
Okay. Works for me. This, for the audience's benefit, this is regarding the design and purchase of a tiller truck for the LPFD fire department. So, so if we wanted to pull that for additional information, we would just
So you'll continue that item. We'll schedule a briefing and we'll bring it back to you.
Okay, terrific. All right, very good. Thank you. I have 2 cards for 4.02 and more for 4.04. 4.02 is the in lieu parking fee. With that, I'd like to ask Sherry Nigg and Doug Mann.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Sherry Nigg, a downtown property owner of 2321 First Street and 2327 First Street. Our property is one of several small parcels in the downtown core that are affected by the in lieu parking fees. If left alone, the current parking in lieu fee would account for over half our building permit cost. To make smaller projects more feasible, there needs to be a reduction in the in lieu parking fees. This was confirmed by city staff and also by the Nelson Nygaard consulting parking study. I asked the mayor and city council to move forward on the reduction of the cost for the in lieu parking fees and also to look for other economic incentives that will make downtown development of those smaller parcels more feasible. Currently, there's a lot of beautiful plans on the drawing board, but they're just not feasible where the costs are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nigg. Doug Mann.
Yeah, really, I don't have anything major on this. It just caught my eye that, and you know, I understand what staff is doing. They're basically trying to make the fee attractive enough for property owners to pay so that you can create public parking where everybody can park, instead of people being incentivized by having a fee that's so expensive that they simply don't want to pay it and will instead take the cheaper alternative and put the required parking spaces on their parcel, and then only they or their customers can park there. And understandably, you know, it makes sense that we have as much public parking where, you know, everybody can park as possible. I'm not sure if this is the way to do it. You guys are more of the experts on this as is staff, but do we have to set a particular number? Is it possible, maybe even preferable, to be able to negotiate these fees with every request for a, you know, I don't know if that's legal and whatnot, but I think you need to be really careful about this. And so if you're all 5 really sure that this is the number it should be, you know, that's fine. If you're not really sure, you might want to look into it a little more, and hopefully everybody can be happy. And, you know, I don't want to keep Sherry from getting what she needs to do her thing, but I just don't know if this is a broad brush really where you need it. So you can go ahead and do with that what you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Just a quick question for the city attorney. His idea of sort of suggestion of different fees for different parcels. I mean, 2 words come to mind: arbitrary and capricious, and then equal protection.
That's a third word, yes.
So that's a bigger word. That's a couple of them,
those are, yeah, that's why the.
But that's one of my concerns. So could you elaborate just a moment on that?
So the fee was established for this particular opportunity after a study to determine what the costs were. It's not a development impact fee, nor is it a fee for service, but it has to be reasonably related to what's being provided. And that was the analysis that was prepared by community development to justify this particular charge.
Okay, great, thank you.
I've got a question on that.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily preclude, in certain circumstances, some negotiation, right? I mean, there's some latitude.
Not with regard to this particular fee. This is not what Mr. Mann may have suggested is a fee based upon the property of the person who's coming forward with their particular unique circumstances. That's not what you're focusing on, this particular fee. This is an in lieu to develop that particular space in a public parking opportunity, not what they're encountering on their particular site.
For example, the city could come up with criteria and incentives. If the city, for example, wanted to subsidize or contribute to certain uses, that is always within the council's discretion. If it is a public policy issue, if you make the appropriate findings, and then again, if you create criteria which then individuals can meet. But simply coming in and saying that the city likes Joe but not Susie is not permitted under the law. And in fact, the city has incentives like that with criteria. People meet them. The incentive then is issued. Numerous examples where you've done that.
Right, but I was just saying it doesn't preclude all latitude here.
So speaking of latitude, if we were to want to explore incentives for particular sites in downtown, that would be, I guess, something appropriate for matters initiated. Just go ahead and deal with this item now, and then matters initiate.
I think the issue of creating incentives is a very good topic for matters initiated. Okay. I would ask for a little more latitude with regard to being site-specific.
Sure, and what I'm getting at is, and one of the reasons, regardless of speaker cards, why I wanted to pull this item, I think, after hearing Councilmember Warner recite his suggestions for improving downtown, or continuing to move forward with downtown, I started to think about all the little parcels that are downtown and what we can do to help encourage either new development or redevelopment of the smaller parcels. I think the last new construction in downtown technically was the Walgreens, or is it a Walgreens? I think it's Walgreens or CVS.
Yeah, the Walgreens.
Oh, and then also we've had a Buffalo Wild Wings, right? Okay, so I just think that we should look at, and I wanted to touch on this during the goal-setting workshop as well, but under matters initiated, I think we should talk about or consider, I'll throw out there, ideas to incentivize development of some of these particular parcels.
Yeah, I think that would be a great subject, as you pointed out, for the goal-setting workshop next month.
Mr. Mayor, if I may echo, I just wanted to kind of take up that same topic, as I've been wondering how it was, how we could incentivize those small parcels being operated as small businesses with such an oppressive fee attached to begin a business there. You're almost dead on arrival when you look at a balance sheet and you're trying to figure out how you're going to come up with that in order to move on. So yeah, that would be a really good topic to take up going forward.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, with that, okay, well, let's go ahead and clear that one as well. So, do you have a motion on 4.02?
I'll make the motion to approve 4.02.
The Vice Mayor makes the motion.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4.02 passes unanimously. Moving on to the last one for consideration on the consent calendar, 4.04. This is the resolution authorizing the execution of an amendment to lease agreement with Livermore Amador Valley Transit Authority and to move the railroad depot back to the tracks. One of the most common questions I get asked is, when did you guys move the depot? And the interesting thing is we never did. They moved the tracks. So it's kind of lost its connection there. So I have a number of cards for that, but do you want to do a staff report, or should we just open up with the, well, you know what, let's go ahead and let's get some background on this before we open it for comments. So please, if you wouldn't mind.
Mayor, Honorable Mayor and council members, I'm Shirley Sheets, your city engineer. Tonight, staff is asking council to consider awarding a construction contract for the rehabilitation and relocation of the city's historic train depot, as well as amendments to the design contract and the LAFTA lease agreement. The existing train depot is in disrepair with major rehabilitation required for roofing, foundation, plumbing, and the building does not meet current fire and health safety requirements, nor does it meet ADA requirements. The building has been severely altered from its original state as a train depot, with its past interim uses as a restaurant and real estate office. At its current location, it is subject to vandalism, and it's an attractant for the homeless. The railroad tracks were removed over 40 years ago, and the facility has lost context with its historic use. This project will enhance the facility's eligibility for consideration on the National Historic Building Register. In general, the project relocates the train station adjacent and parallel to the current operational train tracks, and it repurposes it for a transit ticketing office, both for ACE and for the LAFTA bus services. The rehabilitation will reestablish the passenger waiting area and ticket offices, and the waiting area will host historical artifacts particular to the station and its history. The depot will have a new roof, foundation, fully functioning plumbing and HVAC system, ADA improvements, and it will be brought up to date for the fire life safety components. The HPC and the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission approved entitlements, both the Certificate of Appropriateness and Move Permit, in the spring of 2016. In accordance with the Downtown Specific Plan, the Historic Preservation Committee and Planning Commission identified special circumstances and community benefits associated with this project. These are identified in paragraph 4 of the attached resolution. The city has received a $2.5 million grant for this activity. To be eligible, the depot must have a transportation-related purpose or use. If approved tonight, the project's construction will begin in March of this year, with an expected completion and opening date in the spring of 2018. Staff's available for questions.
Questions for staff at this point? Okay, so just a quick clarification. So the city has a grant from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission for $2.5 million to move the depot if it goes to back to its transportation purposes. If it becomes a train station or some transportation component in going back home, as it were.
Correct. Both to move and rehabilitate, yes.
Right. So if it does not move, can we use those funds to rehabilitate it at its current site?
No, it has to have a related transportation purpose or use. Okay. That's a required criteria for the eligibility of the grant.
So if it is not returned to a transportation use, we lose the grant?
Correct.
And what's the time frame on that?
Well, the most recent grant requirement, there's multiple deadlines along the grant, but by June of this year, the agency, MTC, and actually it's Caltrans working through MTC, has to make sure that the award has been approved.
And if not, we lose it?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes. Councilmember Carlin.
Thank you. If we move it, will it be eligible to be considered for the National Registry?
Yes.
Councilmember Coomber?
Could you elaborate a second on some of the structural problems it has at its current location? I'm aware of some, as I know, having been in there probably 2 years ago. I can lift my chair, my hands off my wheels, and roll all the way across the floor. So it's more or less a parallelogram instead of what should be a rectangle, I think. But is there anything more substantial than those kind of?
Well, yes, the foundation itself is inadequate for it, doesn't meet any of the seismic codes or requirements for that. The roof is in total disrepair and has leakages in it. The plumbing has actually broken and separated, and in a couple areas we've had done patch repairs to it. It has a few sprinklers in it, but doesn't meet the fire requirements for properly sprinkled habitable building. It's rat infested. It's in addition to everything else. So there's a lot of disrepair.
But other than that.
I must confess that at one point I pulled the door handle came off. But I replaced it. I repaired the door handle, so the original door handle is back in place.
There's also hazardous materials within the building that need to be abated. I forgot that one.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. With that, I have a number of cards here. First is John Shirley, Michael Tree, and Susan Junk. Dr. Shirley.
We already talked about that. I said move it.
Oh. Okay. Dr. Shirley says move it. Okay. Michael Tree, the Executive Director of LAVTA. Mr. Tree.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the transit center, the area where the historic depot will be relocated. Currently, you have about 1,000 unique individuals that use the transit center every day. And I think as the LAFTA board contemplated the relocation of the depot, I think they were really excited about the opportunity for people to once again step out of an ACE train or step out of a train and be able to see that historic depot in use. And certainly the passengers on the Wills bus system will value having a unique building there, a historic building, which would have, as planned, a really nice waiting area with historic pictures and a museum-type atmosphere. And then having a beautiful banister, as you've seen in the amendment, which the LAFTA board has agreed, a beautiful banister to interact with the customer service agents. So we're excited about the project. We've added security cameras above and beyond the cameras that we have now so that we can help protect the building. We've also agreed in the original agreement to participate in the maintenance of the building. And so we're excited for the relocation of the depot and see a lot of value and see this as a catalyst project for owners around the depot, around the transit center, to perhaps focus on renewal and make it an even better place. But it certainly will add a lot of energy to the downtown as it's renovated, as people once again use it for transportation purposes.
Mr. Tree, thank you. Susan Junk. Andrea Lloyd, Jeff Caskey.
Hello, I'm Susan Junk, and I live on St. Mary Drive. History, to me, should be accurate. The depot is our connection to the past. The depot and the Southern Pacific right-of-way was part of the Transcontinental Railroad. Originally, the dividing point of our streets as to north or south was because of the depot and the Southern Pacific tracks. The depot is standing in its original location in the William Mendenhall track since 1892. The alignment of our streets in the oldest part of town are because of the depot. As the sign says, the elevation is 486 feet and 47 9/10 miles to San Francisco is accurate to the depot's present and original location. The depot is one of Livermore's earliest examples of live, work, one footprint concept. But if the Southern Pacific train depot next to the Western Pacific right-of-way or track is fake, turning the depot 180 degrees so the west end faces the east and the north side points south is false history. Do not punish our depot just because the Southern Pacific tracks were removed. Please keep our depot on its historic site. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Junk. Andrea Lloyd, Jeff Caskey, Bruce Shore.
Good evening. I'm Andrea Lloyd. I'm a Livermore resident. And just by way of background, last summer I was involved in the coordination of a presentation to Livermore community by Alan Frank regarding the rehabilitation of the depot. After much deliberation and hearing a lot of thought-provoking, passionate arguments on both sides, I'd like to express my appreciation to the council for attempting to try and restore and rehabilitate the depot It might not be the best thing to move it. However, if the funds are not available to restore it in its current condition, I feel that a movement to the new location and to be able to restore it to a vibrant, usable building, and it's something that we can take our children and grandchildren, hopefully someday, to go ahead and look at it and see the history, and also maybe have the original ticket booth, which was brought up at the presentation also.
That's right.
Would be a terrific addition to the Livermore community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. Jeff Caskey, Bruce Shore, Rochelle Snedecor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Caskey, and I am the president of the Livermore Heritage Guild as well. I'm really here to thank the city for this project to save and restore the depot. A project like this is well described in the Downtown Specific Plan as a special circumstance to achieve a public benefit of community-wide or regional significance. We agree with the city that the opportunity to restore the depot, repair the decades of neglect, remove the non-historic modifications, and put the depot back into use as a real train station and transportation hub, just as it was actually designed, is the best possible outcome for this resource. The Secretary of the Interior Standards is a name that we bat around a lot. They have standards for the treatment of historic buildings. They actually have 4 standards for restoration, reconstruction, rehabilitation, and preservation. We're not rebuilding the thing from scratch, so the other 3 are what apply. And each one of those, the standards are actually just 10 items. There are a bunch of things after that, so if you've got the big, thick book, I apologize. But they're really just 10 items, which are the standards. And the first item in each of those 3 categories starts with, a property will be used as it was historically. And here we really have the opportunity to make that happen. The guidelines don't recommend relocating buildings when it destroys the relationship between the building and its setting. But in our case, the most important feature of the setting is the tracks. They've already left. An important part of the setting is also the transportation interface. The train was where the train station is where the train originally met horses and eventually cars and buses. Maybe the most important piece of the setting is the travelers, people disembarking the trains, buying tickets, and using the depot exactly as it was designed. Often the only option for preserving a historic building is to put it to some other use, a flower shop, a museum, a nail salon, a restaurant. Those are not terrible outcomes, and in fact we have a lot of them here in downtown Livermore. But the best thing that we can do for a historic building is use it as it was best intended. I read in the paper that the Livermore Heritage Guild was threatened by a city official to support the relocation. As president of the Heritage Guild, no such thing happened. In fact, city staff presented the plan to the Guild at one of our board meetings, answered a lot of our questions, and the board, at a later meeting, without the city present, voted to support the move. So I really just want to thank the city staff, LAVTA for being such great partners in this, for our opportunity to save the depot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Caskey. Bruce Shore, Rochelle Snedecor, Kathy Chase.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, our historic depot can be moved and should be. I've heard some arguments against it, that it can't be moved. I understand that structural engineers have examined it and said it's feasible. Other depots that have historic importance have been moved and retained their historic significance. I'm told that Danville and Whittier have depots that were moved and retained their historic plaques. Where it now sits, there really isn't any plan for using it. What would it be used for? It's never been commercially successful. Another museum? We've got 2 great history museums, the Carnegie and the Duarte Garage. What other stuff can we put in it? It can find a new life as a transportation center as it was originally intended. And I urge you to bring it back to life for a new historic life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shore. Rochelle Snedecor, Kathy Chase, Nancy Mulligan.
Well, I want to give you a little of our history with what we refer to. She is Dolly the Depot. So I want you to imagine, if you will, we really consider her kind of a mix of Dolly Parton and Mae West. So about 5 years ago, she was completely boarded up, neglected, and being violated constantly by our street-dwelling community. Many historic windows were busted out because if they were anywhere near a door handle, that was the way to get in. And it was just an ongoing horrific issue. We weren't talking one or two living in there. When we started discussions with the city about moving in to preserve it, our role was to come in to arrest decay. We were not in a position as a Livermore Downtown Association to have the funds to restore it or refurbish it, but we took on the challenge. Now that I'm hearing how bad, I'm wondering if we should have. This cough might be, this is actually the flu, I'm just teasing. But we took on that responsibility because of our love for her to move in 5 years ago and arrest the decay. Our first form of work that we took on through volunteers and some paid laborers was removing all of the human excrement that had been piled up into all of the planter areas around the building. It had turned into latrine areas, and we spent money and time and horrific effort on cleaning it up. It was not fair to her, it was not fair to this community to see something of that value so disregarded. So we got through that, and then next phase was painting it. Now, we couldn't do a full restoration painting because it would have exposed lead, things like that. So we did what we could legally do, which was cover it up. But we knew that much of that wood had been exposed for a year, so it was already receiving water damage. Then we had our first rain. Thank God for the drought, because it actually helped us in our office. We had our first rain, and we got to discover many, many, many leaks on the roof. It was not time, or nor did we have the money to replace the roof, so we began the process of finding wonderful local roofers who would patch as needed into that building. So we kept going, and then things happened like plumbing starting to blow up in walls and things like that. But we love her, and we were willing to put up with it, and we just moved out this last May because you're ready to give her the love and the support and the purpose back in her life. She was a station. She's going to get to be who she was built to be again. We are so excited about that. I think she is too, because all of us, as we age, we want to know we still have purpose, and our talents are still available for good use. We would love to see. Not only are people going to be meeting, and we'll be talking with everybody on that if we can help as the commercial district to help you find an entrepreneur that wants to put a small coffee cart available in that area too, because I think, again, we're going to be so close to the parking garage. That's going to be another place to park your car in the garage, walk on over, have a cup of coffee, show your kids our history, and let them learn about Dolly. And I keep calling her Dolly, and so you kind of know I've been known to write little children's books about things in our downtown. She's got a story coming, so help me complete that.
We'll look for that. We'll look for that. Rochelle Snitticor, let's see, Kathy Chase, thank you. Nancy Mulligan, Gary Gomez. Ms. Chase.
Mayor, councilman, and city admin too. I'm the one naysayer here. I do not want the railroad station moved. I do not feel that it's appropriate for you to make this decision tonight unless you're prepared to go ahead and give Leonard full acquisition, full rights to go ahead and develop that property back there. I don't think that the train station should be moved until you know specifically what you're going to do with that downtown property, because that train station could be integrated into that whole development if the city really wanted to do it, if you really wanted to preserve our history and the historic location of that train station. I mean, to really split hairs, you could even sell tickets to the Ace train and the and to the LAVCA buses from that station in its current location, if you really wanted to use it that way and keep it where it belongs. It could be restored. I'd like to know, too, how you got from $2.5 million grant to all of a sudden a $4 million bill for redoing that station. Now, I realize that part of that is the cost of moving it. But I don't feel that tonight is the time for this decision to be made until you know exactly what you're going to do downtown. People have told you over and over and over again they don't want residential building down there on that facility. They want some parking. They don't want a 4-story parking garage, and they want a plaza out there. The art center and training center and everything is a wonderful idea. A small boutique hotel is a wonderful idea, but nobody wants 4-story buildings down there. That train station could be integrated into a development and to a design for downtown. If this city were serious about it, I want to see it stay. I want to see it where it is because it really shows people, first and foremost, exactly where our city began. I've been here for 51 years. I think John's the only one that's been here longer than me. But I look at the changes that are happening, and I recognize the fact that there has been a lot put into maintaining it, and I'm glad that you can maintain the historic preservation of it, though I know that's not true with an awful lot of other buildings if you move them. But we're losing a lot of our historical buildings here in Livermore. I don't want to see another one lost, and I want to see the historic nature of that building maintained right where it is. With the $2.5 million grant, it would be the money to restore it. And you could put it to a transit use again. And you could put the museum pictures in there. You could sell tickets there. And you could even have a Starbucks cart right next to it if you wanted to. But the city has to have the will to do it. I don't think you do.
Thank you, Ms. Chase. Please. Okay, Nancy Mulligan, Gary Gomez, Jason Bezos.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Mulligan. I live at 722 Swallow Drive, and I'm here today as a Livermore resident who loves our town and its history. As I look around our Tri-Valley, I am so impressed with the way our sister cities have preserved their history. Dublin has a heritage park with historic buildings and 2 museums. Pleasanton has the Museum on Main and its many history-based activities. Both cities have paid staff in charge of their facilities. It saddens me that Livermore has never made the effort to preserve our history. Many of our historic buildings have been destroyed, and the depot would also have been destroyed as well if the citizens hadn't formed the Livermore Heritage Guild to stop the destruction. Now again, our beloved depot is in danger of being moved from its historic site. Just in the last months, I've handed out some postcards, and almost every person that I approached signed the cards. Last month, I put out an online petition, and lots of people signed on there. I brought both the postcards and 23 pages of signatures from the petition. Many of the people do not know that the depot is getting ready to be moved, and when it gets brought to their attention, they are very anxious to keep it where it is. I realize that there are not big numbers in this, but that's because most people are unaware of this move. If you looked it over, you'd be struck by how important the depot is to our citizens. It's not just another old building, it is a defining part of Livermore. I just received these 2 photos. This is one of them. I don't know if you know what this building is. It's the
bus
Western
station?
Pacific, which nobody knows about because it's gone. This is a photo of our depot. You can see the history that's in it. You can see how old it was. You can see the train coming down. It's got so much history. It's sad to think that this remaining depot will be gone. Many people who signed the petition also wrote comments, which I sent to the members of the City Council. They are very powerful statements of how the community views the depot. So far, none of the council or city has responded either positively or negatively. But I know the lure of free money from MTC is powerful, but I believe that the city now has to contribute additional funds, and maybe these funds could be used to restore the depot on its site. We need to raise a substantial amount of money, and I believe that we can do this. In fact, I am pledging that I would be in charge of making sure that we got enough money to be able to restore the depot where it is. And one of our citizens, I think, said it the best. It's not a good idea to remove what is authentic and unique in favor of what is bland and convenient. The depot is our jewel, and we need to keep it where it has been for over 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulligan. You give those to the city clerk, if you would, please. Okay, and in all fairness, I would like to say that Ms. Mulligan and I communicated on a number of occasions by email, so I did in fact respond to her questions and inquiries. So with that, Gary Gomez, Jason Bezos, Don Argula.
Hi, good evening. I will talk about the depot not being relocated because it is a pretty historical building, and it's actually, the railroad tracks were moved in 30 years ago, not 40. A lot of that building is in decay. We all know that, we all see that. But the other aspect of it is it can be rehabilitated. One of the big factors about where it is, the city's here because of that depot. It's an old building. It's part of the history of Southern Pacific, which is now gone. And part of what has happened is that whole area has been developed, and the railroad tracks were pulled out because of lack of track, lack of service. The railroad tracks now are being used by Union Pacific. A lot of these buildings are no longer in California because they get demolished or burned down. And this one needs to be saved. You should save history, not make history. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Jason Bezos, Don Argula, Jen Van Toussaint.
Good evening. I'm opposed to the $4.1 million relocation of the train depot, and it's being not really moved. The Union Pacific Railroad doesn't want it next to the tracks. It's going to be moved to the bus island at the bus terminal. It will be a glorified bus terminal. The city should first consider integrating this national historic resource into the Superblock project, which has never been studied. I'm an attorney, and I'm here on behalf of some citizens. The depot relocation is illegal as it violates the downtown specific plan. There is not substantial evidence in the record to support the depot's relocation because neither the Historic Preservation Commission nor the Plan Commission nor the City Council has made any finding that, quote, very special circumstances, unquote, and, quote, a public benefit of community-wide regional significance, unquote, exist, making it necessary to relocate the depot. Now, the default under the downtown specific plan is that it is protected from demolition and relocation except under very special circumstances. But yet, nowhere in the time, and the city is claiming that back in 2006, that this council approved the relocation. That was a part of a real estate deal that fell apart there, the Livermore Village project. There was supposed to be a downtown green built between K Street and South Livermore Avenue. That never happened, but for some reason, the staff and everyone have fixated on this one condition of a failed development and claimed it gives power for the city to keep moving forward on it. And as I've said, there's nothing in the record. The closest thing you find in the record, and this is the real purpose of what's going on here, is, you know, this is a quote from 2006. The relocation of the depot is necessary to redevelop the site to 10 city levels set out as a part of the plan. This is all about real estate development. This is about making a clean slate in downtown to make it ready for the developer. There's much evidence of that over the years. And yet you've not following your own downtown specific plan that's supposed to protect these. I find no evidence in the record, and therefore I think it's abuse of discretion by your HPC Planning Commission and this council. And these so-called findings that are there in the draft resolution, those aren't real findings. This is cobbling together things from an EIR, and it is not, there is not substantial evidence in the record. And secondly, I also really want to emphasize that the Heritage Guild, the members have voted. They rebelled against the leadership and said they want the depot to stay right where it is. And the third point, and this is very important, and Kathy Chase touched on this, at the 11th hour, you're blowing the budget. It's hidden. No one in the staff didn't tell you here. There's the $1 million, an extra million, 1.1 million is being thrown into this project tonight with the council's approval. It's going to go from 3 million to 4.1 million, and that's going to be a 35% cost overrun right now. That money you really need to study keeping it on its site and follow the downtown specific plan, because again, as I say, this is abuse of discretion by the city. You're not following. This is not consistent with the downtown specific plan. And I have letters here for the administrative record to prepare for your enjoyment.
Great. If you can hand those to the city clerk, Mr. Bezos, thank you. And I am in awe of the amount of time and effort that you have studied this, and thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Don Argula, Janet Von Toussaint, Kathy Streeter. Don Argula is going to fight you at the podium.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Marchand, Councilmember Warner, Spadowski, Carling, and Coomber. Welcome. Good evening. Thank you. I am here tonight on my own behalf. Don Argula is a resident of Livermore since 1985. I live over on the south side of town. And I urge you to approve this item and to continue your support for the implementation of this project. I do support this. The depot, Dolly Depot, I love that, has languished for decades, and as we've watched it at its current location, attempts have been made over the years to revitalize this landmark as a restaurant, offices for realtors, and lastly for Downtown Livermore Inc. Merchants Association. But there has been no long-term successful use of this building. Now the City of Livermore has invested public funds to restore it and to use it for its intended purpose, as a train and transit station. That's not a novel, new idea. Thank you. Working with ACE, Laugh to Wheels, and MTC, the city has diligently planned and assembled the necessary funding that is designated for such uses to move the building to the downtown ACE train station. This is a prudent use of public funds, and I want to recognize the efforts of the city staff and the leadership of the mayor and the city council in the development of this project. In closing, I would just say that if Dolly Depot could talk, she would say, thank you for putting me back into service again. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Janet Von Toussaint, Kathy Streeter, Barbara Sewells.
Well, Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Janet Von Toussaint, and I'd like to address the relocation of the depot. I'm a fifth-generation Livermore native. I've lived here all my life, 63 years. Does that beat you, John? I still remember the portion of the train station that Nancy was showing the picture of that was demolished before the Livermore Heritage Guild stepped in and saved the depot. I'm very conflicted over the issue of to move or not to move the depot, and I did sign the petition to save it in place. As a member of the Livermore Heritage Guild, that would be my first choice. Since signing that petition, I have wrestled with what side I'm on. What I've come to accept is that I stand on the side of the depot. To my knowledge, and having not been informed otherwise, I understand that there is no funding available to restore or maintain the depot in place. And I think it's unrealistic to hope that a donation will somehow appear for that purpose. I thought that there were $2.5 million available for moving the depot and it remaining associated with the transportation development. To see the depot fall into disrepair in its current location, excuse me? To see the depot fall into disrepair in its current location breaks my heart even more than moving it. Therefore, I am in favor of moving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Toussaint. Kathy Streeter, Barbara Sewells, and Annie Giannini.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Kathy Streeter, 457 Tyler, and I've been here since 1964. First, I want to thank Nancy Mulligan and all those who joined her in the 70s to preserve the depot. And I applaud those folks who established the Heritage Guild to ensure awareness, to quote, ensure awareness and protection of Livermore's rich heritage by collecting, preserving, interpreting, and sharing historic resources for the education and enjoyment of all. We moved to Livermore in 1964 and have watched the depot live through a number of identities, from a restaurant to a dance studio to offices to rehearsal space, none of which were restorative. These many years stretching into decades, the depot has been used and abused by the homeless and by people who simply did not respect its place in our history. But it has never been restored and has long since lost its significance as a functioning train depot. Now it has a chance to regain its significance and beauty as part of a functioning transportation hub. I have seen the plans, and I know how seriously they have been developed. The depot will be completely restored with care and intimate attention to historic detail, and will have a permanent source of funds to keep it in repair. It will hold an honored place in our city's history. My husband wanted to come tonight too, but he had a board meeting, so he gave me one quick sentence. I have discussed both sides of this issue with a number of people. While I understand the sentiments of those who do not want to see the station moved, I have concluded that the building will receive better care and treatment and attention by being moved to the new location. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Streeter. Barbara Soules, Annie Giannini, Alan Frank.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm here, I'm Barbara Soules. I live in Livermore, 790 Treviso Circle, and I'd like to voice my support for moving the depot to the Transit Center. I'm with the Livermore Heritage Guild, and a couple years ago, city staff came to our board meeting, as Jeff was talking about, to present us their proposal to move and renovate the depot. They wanted the Heritage Guild's endorsement and suggestions, and explained that the money was from the Department of Transportation, and that how the money coming from that organization limited the site options. It had to be near a transit hub. We talked and researched the issue for several months as members of the Heritage Guild, and we finally voted to endorse the city plan with a couple of requests and suggestions. One suggestion was that it become a ticket office for the trains. When that happened, we were quite pleased. I still stand by my vote. Having the depot again serve its original purpose increases the likelihood of it getting on the National Register of Historic Places. That's real important. The funds for renovation are secure. That, again, is extremely important. It will become a wonderful educational stop on our historic walking tours, which are kind of cool. I would like to see some signage. I think that's really, really important, and I'd like to see some signage on the walkways leading to the depot so people will know that where it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Soules. Annie Giannini, Alan Frank.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, members of the community, and visitors. I live at 391 North L Street, 2 blocks from the station. I've been living here for almost 15 years. Most of the time I moved in, I restored my rundown, poor little house to make it very, very nice. It's an historic home, and I've made it very pretty. I like walking downtown, and I walk by the station. I like where it is. I like listening to the trains. My relatives, my sister, my brother-in-law, and my brother have all been conductors and engineers for Southern Pacific Railroad, so I have a place in my heart for trains. It could be restored nicely. It could be made into a little park. I'm not against it being moved. I see both sides of the terrible decision you have to make, and I like everybody here, and I agree with, unfortunately, what everybody has to say. I also belong to the Livermore Heritage Guild. I've seen Livermore improve. I've seen the downtown, the fountains put to use, and everything going on. Bankhead Theater, I'm a little nervous. I have to excuse me. I'm not used to this. I'm kind of shy. But, and I'm happy with the development of the community. I don't even mind the development of the buildings around me, the homes, the townhouses. That's all good. Maybe we could consider something a little different. If we're going to put a nice hotel in, why couldn't the developer have to, like other communities do in Dublin and such, where they could put a park in, a small park for children, what is railroad oriented, kind of like the Nut Tree situation in Vacaville. You could have, the station could be there as a historic railroad museum, bringing up Southern Pacific history and other railroads as well that passed through here and still do. We could also have a playground railroad oriented for children. I have grandchildren who come to play at my house, and I don't have a park to take them to. I'd love to bring them downtown. My family frequents downtown a lot at the Bankhead and other events, movie theaters, all of it. We love it. but the children, we should have a playground so parents will go into town, they can shop. Mothers want to go to stores, fathers do. The children can go to the playground where people have more time to spend downtown because the fountains are kind of cold in winter and it's not a playground. It's great, but it's not very good right now. So maybe we can incorporate the railroad feeling of the downtown community, historic, yet still useful as a park site with a playground and such around it. The merchants might like that because people will stay downtown longer to amuse the children while parents could take advantage of the shops and so forth downtown. It might be something to consider. I do not envy the decision you have to make. I think it's a tough one, but maybe with developer money from the hotel, which would be nice to have, it could be done in a little bit different way and still be useful and attractive. I've been in many countries and seen many parts of the United States where I've seen this sort of thing happen. Seems to work for them, and maybe it could work for us. Thank you very much for listening to me, and good luck in whatever decision you make.
Ms. Giannini, thank you very much. And our last card, Alan Frank. Mr. Frank.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm Alan Frank, 748 Wimbledon Lane. The plan to rehabilitate and return Livermore's historic depot to service as a rail depot is largely funded by the $2.5 million grant of federal transportation funds that came through the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. This is the only funded plan for the rehabilitation and long-term use of the depot that has emerged in the over 40 years since the Heritage Guild saved it from demolition. This plan calls for the historic restoration of the exterior and modernization of the interior in the historic style. To return the depot to railway service, it must be moved to the tracks that were moved away years ago. The MTC grant can only be used to place the depot into transportation service and cannot be used to restore the depot for some other purpose. The depot will never be returned to railway service where it is located. The tracks are not coming back to Railroad Avenue. Returning it to its historically intended service will enhance its eligibility for the National Register of Historic Places, overriding any issues due to its move. Of the 11 remaining depots of this design, none are in railroad depot service. 2 are on the National Register, and both of them have been moved. None of the viable redevelopment proposals for the downtown property include the depot. No funded alternative proposal for the depot has emerged before or since the council approved this project, nor has any alternative business plan emerged that provides for the long-term upkeep of the depot. For these reasons, the Heritage Guild voted to support this project. Changes made to the historic fabric of the building have been so great that a full restoration is extremely costly. Most damaging was its conversion to a restaurant, which did not survive. No subsequent tenant has provided the wherewithal even to maintain the building as it has continued to deteriorate. It is not likely that a few well-intentioned individuals could easily or quickly come up with the funds necessary for repair and restoration, even considering volunteer labor. Without restoration, the Register will consider it as an ineligible wreck. In the years since the depot saw its last railroad service, no funded program has emerged that could preserve it in the long term. This project will rehabilitate the building and return it to its historic service and provide a permanent funding stream for its upkeep. I urge the council to move ahead now with this project. Thank you.
On the money. Thank you. Perfect timing. Wow. Thank you all for your comments. This has been great input from the community, and I can tell all of it is heartfelt. With that, I'm going to close the comment period and return it to the council, and looking for comments at this point from the council. Any further questions at this point?
Just a quick question. So the former RDA LSA construction funds that is indicated in the staff report, that $1 million Should the project not go forward, what happens to that source of funding?
Those funds are available for projects within your former redevelopment area, consistent with the original redevelopment plan and the documents that have been filed by you through the successor agency with the approval of the oversight board in your long-range property management plan. So essentially, projects within the old downtown area that are capital projects that were previously identified, you could use those funds for those projects.
And the federal TLC grant, the $2.5 million?
Would expire in return. That program no longer exists, and staff from MTC has noted that they don't have the ability, since those funds don't originate with them, to ultimately reprogram those funds. So at that point, those funds would expire, and essentially we would not be eligible to use those any longer.
And when you say reprogram, that means those identified funds go back in the pot and it's available to anybody in the MTC.
Essentially, that program no longer exists in the original format. The funds that we have would actually have obligated would return, yes, to the pot, and essentially those would be used for other purposes.
Okay. So it's other purposes, as in it's
not us.
Not us.
Not us is the real piece that you really want to know
So
about.
generally, when you return money to MTC, they're not generally inclined to say, okay, well, what do you want to do with it?
In this particular case, I do have to note that MTC has been incredibly flexible with us. As noted in the staff report, this has been an extraordinarily long process, and MTC staff has worked very, very diligently with the city to try and preserve the original concept of the grants by even actually using a different source of funds. So I really can't say anything bad about MTC on this one. As far as staff, many, many years, they've stretched out a process that was supposed to be done in a couple of years to almost a decade. And they sort of did note that they have used every trick in their book on this particular funding source.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, return it to the council. Comments, Councilmember
Just a
Coomber.
quick comment. I am more than an amateur historian in California history, especially, and it's much more painful to me to watch that building deteriorated than to have it repurposed. And my wife's an ace commuter. To have that downtown is a sparkling example of what can be done with a building like that when we have the money available right now to get it moved and get it ready to go down there. I think it's a fantastic opportunity that when the alternative is watching that building continue to deteriorate right where it is, absent any funding sources, which I haven't heard yet, to rehabilitate it, I'd love to see those pieces of history remain intact if we can place them somewhere where we can rehabilitate them. And for another very selfish purpose, I'd like to be able to go inside it more without having to climb over things. So again, making it ADA accessible is a huge factor for me. Thanks.
Councilmember Carlin.
Yes, I'll second Bob's comments. I've been very impressed with the passion that people have on both sides of this particular topic. I, too, am looking forward to seeing it rehabilitated, put back to its original purpose, both in its design, the color schemes, and some of the other aspects that'll be taken or be expected to be installed inside the building. All seem just perfect for what we want in restoration of such a prominent building as the depot. So I'm very much in support of moving it to the transit center.
Councilmember Warner.
Well, I think for all the reasons stated by the other two Bobs, it makes sense to move it, and I'll be as succinct as Mr. Shirley and say I believe on balance it should move.
Vice Mayor.
And I will agree with Bob. Bob.
Once again.
And Bob. I'm going to use that one every meeting that I can.
Getting old
sorry,
already.
That's never gonna die. It's classic now. So the city has worked on this issue for over 10 years prior to purchasing the land. It's been 40 years without a sustainable plan for use or routine maintenance, and it's a hard decision. I would love to keep it where it is, but I question valuing the location over the well-being of the depot, and that's not just the immediate well-being, but the long-term and sustainable use of that building. I sit on the LAFTA Board of Directors. I'm the current chair, and along with Councilmember Coomer, we are on the LAFTA Board of Directors, and we're going to make sure that this is done right. We're already moving to ensure that the ticketing will occur inside the building. Although we have the original ticketing window, we're going to allow people to come into the building. We're going to encourage them to come in and see and use the building. And it's been interesting. I've heard stories. Don't know if they're true or not. You know, you can never trust the internet. It could be an alternate fact. But you know, people have been coming forward with the ticketing window because of this, and with the original doors. People are saying, "Hey, you know, I've been holding on to these doors. How they got them?" You know, that would be that shows you right there. That's part of the problem. People walked away with the doors of the depot. People walked away with the ticketing window. So I think we need to finally put an end to this and have some assurance that we're going to be able to move forward with this building and have a sustainable plan. And so with that, I think ideally keeping it on site is the best, overall, but for the best for the building would be moving it to the LAFTA transit station.
This is a tough one. We all love the depot. And as was pointed out, how painful it is to watch something that you love just gradually deteriorate until ultimately it's going to collapse. I read every one of those 489 comments on the petition letter. About 30% of them were not from Livermore, but there were still people that were concerned about the depot. Suggestions of, well, turning it into a visitor center. We've got a beautiful visitor center in the downtown. It's the Bankhead Theater. Or having the Chamber of Commerce move in. Well, the Chamber of Commerce already has a building right smack in the middle of the downtown, and they're happy to be there. So nobody else has really wanted to do anything to restore the building. We've got $2.5 million now to restore this building back to its original glory. Two of the people for whom I have the greatest respect when it comes to the history of Livermore, we heard from tonight, Jeff Caskey and Alan Franks. They understand the importance of this, and I was struck by Mr. Caskey's comment about use it as it was intended. And that's what we're trying to do here, is it's going to go back home. It's going back to the tracks, and it's going to once again have its purpose restored.
As a bus terminal.
And it's an ACE terminal, and ACE, it runs on tracks, and it looks like a train to me. Now, it might not be for the Federal Transit Authority, but which was a revelation for me. ACE is not considered a train. What? Yeah, I know, it's interesting, but that's the federal government. It's another alternative fact. But this is an opportunity. It's a fleeting opportunity. So we've heard people say, well, why don't you wait until you know what you're going to do with the downtown? Well, you know what? If we wait, that window closes. And $2.5 million, that's a lot of money to lose. So I would be willing to entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the staff's recommendation to move the depot.
Okay, moved by. Let me ask you a question. We have a motion. Well, let me get the second first. Councilmember Coomer, you second?
I'm the second, yes.
Okay. The question came up is this action legal? Have sufficient findings been made in this 10-year history?
We are confident that there is substantial evidence in the record for this decision here tonight.
Okay, thank you. So we are acting legally.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's take a, thank you. And again, thank you for your passion. Thank you for your commitment. And thank you for caring. That's very important. So let's take a quick 10-minute break. Recollect our thoughts. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to work here. As I mentioned earlier, we're flipping the 5.01 and 6.01, so we're going to take on matters for consideration. 6.01, discussion and direction regarding a request from Lennar Multifamily Communities and Presidio Companies to extend the exclusive negotiation rights agreement for the development of the Downtown Specific Plan Catalyst sites. Mr. Spence.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, members of the City Council. I'm Paul Spence, your Community Development Director. I'm going to provide you with just a little bit of background and a brief overview, and then we have Lennar and Presidio that are here to provide some comments to you under this item this evening. So, as you may recall, the Council did its goal setting in 2015. The Council asked staff to focus efforts on the implementation of the Downtown Specific Plan, including the redevelopment of 2 city-owned catalyst sites on the east and west sides of Livermore Avenue. As a result, staff worked with a team of brokers to advertise the properties through a request for proposals, or RFP, for these sites to include a hotel, housing, and retail uses consistent with the Downtown Specific Plan. The city received 15 responses to the RFP, which were ranked based on factors such as experience, resources, readiness, and vision. The proposals were vetted by staff and reviewed by the Council at a series of public meetings. The Lennar Presidio team was ultimately selected as the most responsive development team with the best combination of experience, resources, and capacity to pursue the project. The Lennar Presidio team's proposed project includes 260 housing units, a 12,000 square foot market hall, a 125-room Marriott Autograph Collection hotel with associated amenities, a series of plazas and public pathways, and the construction of a city parking structure. On July 27, 2016, the city entered into an exclusive negotiating rights agreement with Lennar and Presidio, or an ENRA for short. The purpose of the ENRA was to allow time for refinements to the project and negotiations on a purchase and sale agreement. On August 1st and then again on August 8th, the Planning Commission and City Council held joint workshops or meetings to receive additional public comment on and to discuss the project. Ultimately, the Council directed staff to conduct additional studies, including parking, traffic, market, and environmental analysis. At subsequent City Council meetings this fall, Council gave staff additional direction to conduct analysis on a variety of downtown topics. These included a parking garage adjacent to our existing parking garage on Railroad Avenue, building heights downtown, lighting on 2nd, 3rd, J, and K streets, shade improvements to the plaza at the Bankhead, and completion of plans for the Livermorian Plaza. Staff is working on all of these analyses and will be returning to Council in the coming months with reports and information on these items. The NRA with Lennar and Presidio had a 150-day period, and with a 30-day extension, it will expire today, if not extended by the City Council. Lennar and Presidio have requested a 9-month extension to the NRA to allow time for these special study results to be received, for project plans to be modified based on public input and City Council direction. Both developers have expressed an interest in working proactively with the community through this process. As identified in your staff report, the Council has several options on this item. If the Council takes no action or rejects the extension, the ENRA will expire. If the Council wishes to approve an extension to the ENRA, staff recommends you identify the length of extension, any modifications you would like to the ENRA, any special conditions, and then authorize the city manager to sign the extension. This concludes staff's overview. We're available for questions, and as I mentioned, we do have representatives from Lennar and Presidio here this evening.
Questions for staff at this point? Okay, so are we going to hear a presentation from the developer as well?
Yes, they each have some brief comments and things they'd like to say to the Council.
Okay, shall we hear this?
Thank you, Paul. Honorable Mayor, Council, Mr. Carlin, Mr. Coomer, congratulations. Happy New Year. My name is Rakesh Patel. I'm with Presidio Companies. I'm speaking on behalf of the hotel and Presidio Companies, but a lot of what I have to say right now is going to apply equally to what Sarah is going to say on behalf of Lennar. Just to give a little bit of background quickly, I won't be too long. Prior to our selection as the hotel developer in May, we heard about the project perhaps 3 or 4 weeks in advance of that date. We quickly, really quickly, put our project together, got Marriott involved, and within 2.5 weeks, put the RFP together on the hotel side and got approved. Since that day, I have been to Livermore probably 50 times. And every single time, I really do appreciate it. Today, there was a nice rainbow on the way over, right across the bridge. I say all that just to underscore the fact that Presidio is absolutely 1,000% committed to building an upscale hotel in the downtown, Livermore, somewhere on the site. And the question today is not where the hotel should sit. The question today is not what the hotel should look like. The question today is not even what the hotel should be named. Those are all questions for the community to answer immediately after today. What we're asking for today is to continue to be involved in the process as your partner in this process going forward. And that means whatever you want it to mean. That means we step aside for a couple months while the community figures out what side the hotel sits on, or that means we stand by the community and help them figure out what side the hotel sits on. Me and my colleague Michael Bish were just having dinner before today's meeting, and we were talking about how cool actually a hotel might look on the west side if it was sitting right above Blacksmith Square. We could make a hotel work on the west side if we figured out Blacksmith Square, but we can't answer that question. We can't help answer that question until we have the opportunity to do so. And so today, I stand here and I ask the question, does the council want Presidio to continue? I think you know the answer to the question from our perspective. We absolutely want to continue in this process, and we hope you give us that opportunity. And I'll continue coming out here until you tell me not to anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. My name is Sarah Converse, and I'm here tonight for LMC representing both Alex Waterbury and Chad Kiltz. I'm new to this process. However, I wanted to share that we've been working on this opportunity for over a year. By requesting this extension, we are just asking for an opportunity to follow council and staff's lead by engaging the community. This will allow us the opportunity to study the site plan while contemplating design alternatives and best uses for the site. We remain enthusiastic and look forward to the partnership with the community, council, and staff. Again, thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions at this point? Mr. Spence, this has been an ongoing process. So we're not at the end of a process. We're still in the middle. We had over the course of about a year and a half, we developed, well, actually going back farther than that, we had the Downtown Specific Plan, which we've been working on for well over a decade. And what we've heard referred to as the Lennar Plan is actually the city's plan, because the city produced the RFP based on a lot of the input that we received over those 10 years on the Downtown Specific Plan of what the community said they wanted. So the initial response that we got was for what the city requested in this RFP.
Yes, that's right. The response really was a response to the Downtown Specific Plan. As mentioned this evening, the development team has been listening to the community and has expressed an interest in continuing to work and a willingness to modify plans to respond to the council and the community.
So where we are right now is we took a lot of community input in July and August. The council directed staff to collect the data to then start to rework that plan. And ultimately, the selection of the developer was to find someone who would be able to complete a plan. But we haven't reached that plan yet. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so we're still in the process of developing a plan, and we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Right. We'll be back to you, as I mentioned, with results of our analysis on various topics in the coming months. We've, based on council comment, are anticipating community workshops and outreach. We'll be talking more about that with your goal setting and And out of that process, we would expect to refine and define the plan for downtown.
So in this interim period of 4 or 5 months, have we actually been involved in what you would call negotiations, or are we still waiting for data?
No, we have not been involved in negotiations.
Okay, so in this exclusive negotiating rights agreement, we haven't been able to do any negotiating yet.
We've had preliminary discussions, but we really haven't gotten very far because we're waiting to define what the plan is.
We're still waiting to define the project. Okay, okay, thank you. That answers my question. Okay, with that, I've got probably 15, 20 cards here. So confine your comments to 3 minutes if you would. First speaker is unidentified speaker. Do we have an unidentified speaker? Name is optional. So if someone, yeah, you're not unidentified. I know you. Okay. Perhaps they went home. We'll give another call. Splendorio, Beth Trutner, and Doug Mann. Mr. Splendorio.
Happy New Year, Mayor Marchand and council members. My name is Splendorio. I'm here as a board member of Innovation Tri-Valley. I'm also the chair of its Housing, Infrastructure, and Transportation Committee. I'm here on behalf of ITV, which is a Tri-Valley organization that represents the major employers and nonprofits and community groups whose basic purpose is to promote business and innovation within our area. We support that you continue negotiations or the rights with these folks. We support the building of workforce housing in all the cities, including Livermore. We support the providing of the amenities and services that our growing business community requires, such as a hotel in downtown Livermore, which is something, at least through my tenure here, is something that all the folks in Livermore have wanted and desired for decades. So we support that you continue playing, or at least keeping these players in the game until you go through all the community process. We feel it's fair to them. They've invested a lot of time and money on for their own efforts, just as you and your staff have devoted time and all the community members have devoted time. So let them continue for a while. Let's see if the community's vision and their vision meet, and we probably be ahead of the game if we do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Splendorio. Beth Trutner, Doug Mann, Rochelle Snedecor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Beth Trutner, and I'm the board chair of the Livermore Shakespeare Festival. The Shakespeare Festival is now in its 15th year of producing Shakespeare in the Vineyard in our beautiful Livermore Valley wine country. We will produce A Midsummer Night's Dream and Cyrano de Bergerac this summer at Wente Vineyards on Tesla Road. We now have 7 teaching artists in all 11 Livermore elementary schools, serving close to 1,000 second graders with our 10-week literacy program, So Wise, So Young. Each summer, we bring in over 4,000 patrons to see the performances at Wente Vineyards. Of those 4,000 patrons, almost 40% are coming from outside the Tri-Valley. That means that we're bringing about 1,500 potential overnight visitors every summer, and these statistics have been growing for several years now. Livermore Shakespeare Festival would love for the city of Livermore to have an attractive downtown hotel option for these visitors. Our future audience growth and a positive economic impact in our community depends on the overnight visitor. We strongly encourage the council to consider moving forward with the exclusive negotiating rights with Presidio in regards to the downtown hotel. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Mann, Rochelle Snedecor, Tamara Royce.
Good evening once again. I would like to recommend that you take no action on this extension request. It seems that the choice of Lennar has been a mistake. The only 2 council members that voted for Lennar have now been thrown out of office, arguably because of this issue and the way it's been mishandled over the long term. Lennar did not prove to be a positive force. in this whole process. They really didn't understand our culture. They didn't, really encourage talking to the community group. I mean, they didn't seem to want to engage in that way. They seemed to sort of want to take this in just a different way. I mean, we've seen how they work. Ultimately, I think they proved to be inappropriate for this task. Now, our RFP that we developed, as you rightly point out, Mr. Mayor, did not reflect anything that our community was going to allow, despite all the good intentions. Staff didn't try to fail on this. It just happened. But here's the thing. Lennar's actual name is Lennar Multifamily Communities. The name says it all. It's pretty much the last thing that people who stood up and voted those two council members out of office wanted for this downtown. We want a very different direction than what Lennar specializes in. They can always reapply. There's no need to keep them as exclusive. I think that would be a mistake, to sort of limit the outreach and the ideas. And, the same with Presidio. I mean, Presidio has been so involved in the process, I can't help but believe they will maintain as much involvement as they would need to have to re-win this once we figure out exactly what we want in the hotel. The hotel, not everybody may want a convention-level hotel. It might be that we want to shift gears and go to a boutique hotel, maybe something like Rose Hotel. I don't know that we've really asked the community that question, exactly what kind of hotel we want. Instead, it was wrapped around this RFP, which proved to be unworkable for the residents. I'm about out of time, but I would just like to say that as a business owner, we do estimates all the time. I just need 10 seconds. It's a long process, and both Lennar and the other 14 companies that put in a considerable amount of work on this were really done a disservice by putting out an RFP that was so inaccurate. I would support, as long as there was no objection by legal, that we give them a proper apology for really asking for something that we're never going to build.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Rochelle Snedecor, Tamara Royce, Russ Wilmus.
So Rochelle Snedeker with Livermore Downtown, Inc. It's interesting when people say that this is all moving too fast. Because I started this position 17 years ago, but I was in the wine industry before that, and I remember going to wine growers meetings and hearing about what we were going to be doing in the downtown development with the hotel. But we have a very passionate community, and we heard that loud and clear through this last round of discussions, through the election. But we can't keep dragging our feet. The hotel is something that has been just a missing link in our downtown. Our businesses need this. They need to see a commitment to economic vitality being continued to be invested into the downtown in the neighborhood that we attracted them to invest in. We told them years ago that this downtown was going to be revitalized. We were putting in a streetscape. We had all these wonderful assets that were coming in that were going to secure their financial stability as they move forward. It's very hard to face them and say, we don't really know now. They know they need the hotel. I think we heard loud and clear that housing scares people, and I don't think that's a Livermore issue only. I think that's happening all over California, especially the Bay Area, because it's a need that's not being met, and it's trying to figure out how can a community feel comfortable with the need being met. So we do endorse. I'm almost divorcing or endorsing. I don't know which I'm doing right now. We do endorse moving forward. I think the hard part with you guys is figuring out what is comfortable. We have two new players, two new Bobs in the mix here, and so new ideas are coming in. We really would like to request, as we move forward, that there be more interaction with the downtown business community. The business community is being heard, but I think the ones that live there have their back doors that are going to be affected, have their, some of them mortgage their homes to open a business because we said we were going to support it. We need to make sure that those conversations are happening at that level and not just at higher corporate level and city level. So our door's open. My email is always accessible, has been given out. We just need to know that we're in the mix as we move forward so that we can ensure that our residents and our downtown business community feels really comfortable with the outcome. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Tamara Royce, Russ Wilmus, Dawn Argula.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just want to express that I think we need to not extend the agreement. I think this is a case where we have put, in our city, we've put the cart before the horse, and what that has done is create an untenable, unworkable plan. And at this point in time, I think the public sentiment has, been loud and clear that it doesn't match what Lennar has proposed. And we need to, they don't have the pulse of this community. They're not the right company for this task. And I think it's important that we get this right. This is a commitment that's, something that may last 100 years, like the depot. We want it to be done right. We don't want to have to effectively move the depot or come back later and find out it didn't work. I'm very concerned about the kind of housing that Lennar builds. I've been, I take BART every day. I'm not saying this is a Lennar project, but I see these industrial 4-story, new residences right across from BART. They're ugly. This would not, we don't want too much housing downtown, and Lennar has expressed that they need to build a lot of housing to make the project economically viable for them. I think there are other companies who would be willing to take a fresh look at this project, and if we did the RFP in a way that reflected exactly what the community wants from the get-go. And I also think that, we've talked about not delaying any further. Well, we can't afford to do it wrong. We've had delays that weren't due to the lack of will of the community. They were due to economic forces that at that time we had no control over. And they were due to changes in the laws that meant we couldn't build the big theater downtown. Conditions change all the time, and there are uncertainties in the future, but that doesn't justify moving forward with a bad plan and the wrong builder for the project. So I would hope that you do not extend this agreement, that we take that fresh look, that we, give the opportunity to the community to really flesh it out the way that it should be, and then we move forward with the right plan at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Royce. Russ Wilmus, Dawn Argula, Gene King.
Good evening, and congratulations to the new council members. That was a lot of politics. I handed out flyers for these gentlemen. I like their message. I like their platform. I think, if you think about it, there's 50, I looked on the register site, there's 50,000 registered voters in Livermore. Between these two, they got 30,000 votes. To me, that sounds like a political mandate. It speaks, it's bigger than a Chamber of Commerce. It's bigger than small business. It's bigger than Lennar. It's bigger than Presidio. It's your people. It's a democratic constituency. We had a vote, and the people spoke. The general election, the national election, they spoke there too, but I wasn't happy with that result. But anyway, my thought is to clear the slate. I know you're in the middle of a lot of work, a lot of negotiations, a lot of ideas. So I think we need fresh ideas, a fresh start. So I propose, my idea is to follow through with the political campaign and the mandate, and no Lennar, no Presidio. Lennar is busy over in Dublin, very busy, big company. I'm sure this won't hurt their bottom line whatsoever. The hotel, I'm not that, big on the hotel to begin with, but anyway, I think there should be another use for the heart of the city. That's my final point, and I say don't extend it, start over. They can be still considered, they're a viable company, Presidio too, but I think we should start over and get more public input. Have like the lady before me said, the dog and pony thing, or the cart before the horse. I called it a dog and pony show. There you go, two cliches right there in a row. But I think we need to get everybody's input. The cities, the 30,000 people that voted for these two, and their platform, and I handed out flyers. I handed those flyers out all over the city. And a lot of people felt deeply about it. So I would say that we need to reevaluate and start over as a city and with new ideas. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilness. Dawn Argula, Gene King, Dale Kay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Dawn Argula, and now I'm speaking on behalf of the Livermore Valley Chamber of Commerce, of which I am the CEO. We want to express our support for your approval of option 1 to grant the 9-month extension requested by Lennar and Presidio for the downtown Livermore Catalyst sites. Frankly, I was surprised and very pleased to hear that they were interested in requesting the extension. So they're still in the game. There's some possibilities here. This extension will allow time for the city to complete its traffic, parking, economic, and environmental studies, which will inform and offer an opportunity for Lennar and Presidio to respond with adjustments to their conceptual plan and proposal. So we'll have plenty of time to look at, what that looks like, and if we hate it, if we love it, if maybe we massage it a little more. And it provides an opportunity, as I said, for the council and the community to review and consider the changes and to respond. Many of you up there, or just about all of you, have been in your personal lives, have functioned in roles of authority and working at big businesses and organizations, and you understand the expectations of planning and long-range planning and staying the course. Time is money. We miss out on opportunities if we constantly change course and we are not brave and bold and stay the course. There are opportunities along the way, and there are milestones or posts where there's an opportunity to look at the information and to make changes if needed. So this does not keep you on the one course. I mean, this is an opportunity. Let's hear the information to restart this process. Again, will set us back. I mean, we know that we have a plan that was painfully developed with the community back in the day that established the main core and guidelines and framework for what we want to see downtown. So, and this is the next phase of that development. And those developers, Lennar and Presidio, followed those guidelines to develop their concepts and their proposals. So now we're going to get more information that's going to inform them and us. So let's see what those changes are. So stay the course. We understand that sometimes people forget, many years pass and then these things occur and then we're surprised. And there are some reactions and responses that are they're unwelcome. This is the opportunity for us to educate and outreach and inform and have conversations with the community, the residents, the businesses, and others that will be affected by this. So we will support you in doing that work, and we will walk with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Argula. Gene King, Dale Kay, Tom Jefferson.
Good evening, Jean King. But first of all, I would like to say that Lee Yonker couldn't be here tonight, and so he wrote a very long statement, but I don't have time for his complete statement, but here is his first sentence. The exclusive negotiation rights agreement, ENRA, with developers Lennar and Presidio should not be extended at this city council meeting. So that was his statement. My statement is, good evening, staff, council, and mayors. I have requests and questions about the downtown development. I urge you not to extend the ENRA for Lennar and Presidio for our downtown. We should open up the process. Lennar and Presidio can continue to be considered. They will not necessarily be excluded, but with a new plan, we need the opportunity for input from other developers. I urge you to conduct public workshops. Even though there has been much public testimony from the previous plan, we need to start with a new slate. Let's not try to rework that plan, which was the wrong direction, but start from a new, open perspective. My questions are, when the ENRA is terminated and the workshops have been conducted, how will the process work? Will there need to be a lengthy RFP? Are there other options? How can the ideas of the community be incorporated into a proposal for the developers? What will be the selection process of the master developer and the hotel developer? It has been almost 2 years since we started down the wrong path, and I hope that we can move forward and get a good result in a reasonable time. BART to Livermore will not be running in my lifetime, but I hope I will be around to see a beautiful hotel, a functional conference center, and an inviting green public open space in our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. King. Dale Kay, Tom Jefferson, David Rounds.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and members of City Council, and Happy New Year. Dale Kay again. I'm representing Innovation Tri-Valley Leadership Group. We have from the very beginning been very supportive of both developers for this group. We think they have done due diligence. They have been very committed to this project and to this community, and we, unlike some of the other people in this room, feel like they have been very communicative. Housing is something that we desperately need. And businesses are residents and citizens too. They desperately need housing to recruit and retain employees. It's become their number one problem. This hotel, this beautiful hotel, I might say, it's been identified for as long as I've been here, which is not as long as most people, but it's over a decade, as one of the most important and the missing piece of the puzzle that we need to make this place just absolutely perfect. So don't let this hotel get away. I'm not going to tell you any more facts and figures because I think Splen and Dawn have done a good job, but I would like to tell you a story that I hope inspires you because it did me. My son, like somebody else in this room, was very upset by the national election. And he works for one of the tech companies in Livermore that has other campuses around the country. And when he was upset, one of his senior executives said, okay, this is the smartest thing you can do. You can get engaged with local government because you can actually talk to them. Your voice can be heard with local government. They are the purest form of government because they are not being paid a whole lot, for one thing. And they also live in their community, so they're unlikely to sit up there and worry about nothing but being reelected. They are not easily swayed by special interest groups. They are much more noble than that because they live here. Some of them work here, but they live here. They spend every weekend here. They know the community and they know what's best for this community. So what I'm asking is for you to simply be brave and move forward with this project because we will probably lose something spectacular for this city if you don't. And I'm also, just one other comment, with all respect for everybody else in this room, I think it's okay to make history because you have one of the smartest populations in the world, and they are making history constantly. And I know you are willing to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Tom Jefferson, David Rounds, Jan Bravant.
I am Tom Jefferson. I see absolutely no benefit to the city of Livermore to extend this exclusive negotiation agreement with Lennar. Not extending it tonight does not mean they're out of the business of developing downtown. It's just we have more players involved and we'll be able to get a better deal. Now, just one little thing, it's sort of like you have a leak in your house, so you agree with the plumber, he's going to fix the leak. He doesn't quite get it done, but you decide to give him more time, extend the agreement. And then you find out, or maybe even before you extended the agreement, you find out it's not a plumbing leak, it's a roof leak. So actually you have the wrong developer, the wrong person working for you. So I urge you not to extend the agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. David Rounds, Jan Bravant, Chris Chandler.
Mr. Mayor, council, and staff, thanks for the opportunity to make some comments. And to the new members of the council, Mr. Comer and Mr. Carlin, congratulations on your victory. And you were selected by the voters of Livermore in what, in my view, is a mandate. 48% of the total votes cast went to you two, and the incumbents received less than 28% of the total vote. And for myself, and I believe for many of the voters, the overarching issue about this election was the development plans for downtown. We objected to the process used and the density of the plan that was accepted by the previous council. This led in part to your election victory and to this item being on tonight's agenda. Lennar has requested an extension of the window to negotiate with the city on the purchase and sale agreement. It is certainly understandable that they would ask for this. Lennar and Presidio both have put in a significant amount of time and energy into their proposal, and the negotiating process was pretty much derailed by citizens' objections. Nevertheless, granting this extension would be a mistake. The original RFP provided guidance and direction to the developers based on the 2004 downtown specific plan. Clearly, many of the citizens do not want development at the density and traffic levels outlined in the 2004 downtown specific plan. Lennar could certainly regroup and deliver a new proposal, which is what they're proposing now, but doing this would sell the voters in the city short. I would like to see the process reopened and, with community input, provide guidance for a new RFP that focuses on a clearer vision of what we want to see downtown. In the last RFP, many developers provided some interesting and creative suggestions for the downtown project, suggestions that were based on a specific plan that would allow 400+ housing units. Let's see what some of these creative development companies can do now with a new vision based on much less housing and much more open space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rounds. Jan Bravant, Chris Chandler, Todd Dibbs.
Mr. Mayor and City Council member, good evening. My name is Jan Bravant. I live on the south side of town in Livermore. I very much agree with Gene King and the gentleman that spoke just before me. I do not think that the plan should be extended at this time. It's my understanding that the original downtown specific plan was agreed upon in 2004, and people started building what a lot of us call the stack and pack kind of building because we are short of housing. But after we've had a chance to see that in the last 12 years, most people don't like it. Realize that we're going to have it in some areas, but they don't want to see that downtown. I think they would prefer to see very little residential or no residential. Hotel is fine. The other amenities, obviously, especially the garage, is fine, but not a big number of high residents. We have 24 acres plus out on First Street, I understand, has been rezoned for residential. There's another 11 acres on First Street that's being worked on. There's 158 units there they're talking about. So that's quite a few building fairly close to downtown, that we don't need to put it in that jewel of a spot. And like the other people have said, this is going to be our one and only time. So I think we need to take a little more time and look a little different take on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bavant. Chris Chandler, Todd Dibbs, excuse me, and finally Chester Moore.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, City Council members, and a warm welcome to the new council members. The Livermore Valley Wine Growers Association looks forward to working with each of you on developing this very important, vital area and asset. Over the past several months, there's been much healthy discussion and input over the hotel configuration, number of housing units, open space, parking spaces, and traffic. Given the time, energy, and finances that the citizens, the city, Lennar, and Presidio have invested, we should extend the exclusive negotiating agreement. The process should be allowed to continue with Lennar and Presidio, with the goal of crafting a solution that is satisfactory to the city and the citizens who care so deeply and passionately about this future development. The Wine Growers Association desperately wants a downtown hotel to become a reality. We expect Lennar and Presidio to work with the citizens for the best possible plan. Please vote to continue this exclusive negotiating agreement. If, at the end of this extension, progress has not been made, it will be time to start over. However, to not grant this extension seems to be a waste of all the valuable input and ideas that have been collected from the community so far. Please vote to extend the exclusive negotiating agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Todd Dibbs, Chester Moore. Oh. There has been a mistake here. Excuse me. Thank you. Okay, Todd Dibbs, Chester Moore, Jason Bezos. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, Council, officials. My name is Todd Dibbs. I represent Visit Tri-Valley. This is a statement I'm reading in proxy for Barbara Steinfeld, who is the president of Visit Tri-Valley, the destination marketing organization for the Tri-Valley. Visit Tri-Valley recognizes that for many years, Livermore has wanted and needed a downtown hotel, and we want to help make that happen. If Livermore starts the process over, we will lose momentum and we will lose an excellent hotel development partner. Please grant the extension and continue the process to work with Presidio on developing the hotel as proposed in downtown Livermore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dibbs. Chester Moore and Jason Bezos.
Good evening. As you guys know, I also ran for city council and came in 6th out of 6. But I do represent the votes of approval of a town square concept that generated 5,200 voters. So if you take my 5,200 voters and add them to your 30,000 voters, then you have a substantial majority of people. However, I think it's true, I've learned in campaigning that I really don't know who voted for me. And I don't think you know either. There are 80,000 people out here who are watching what we do and expecting high performance from all of us. Okay, so I urge you not to extend the contract. I think the contract developed a lot of opposition, and I think we need a fresh start. And I think that's what the people want. And you can count my voters among those because I ran very specifically favoring a specific detailed kind of proposal for a town square. So the people who voted for me were voting for something that involved a big open space in the central portion of the key block that we're talking about, the Dusty parking lot. So they knew what I was running for, and they voted for that concept. So they're ready to go ahead. So I think this process that we're talking about, I commend the council what was it, last meeting, where you voted for a regularly scheduled group of workshops where you're going to go and ask the people for their feedback. Well, they need information for that feedback, and I think we should provide it in a very detailed form that is in a form that is something that they can understand, namely pictures and plans and layouts. But I'd also like to point out that the town square that I advocated is a very fragile thing. It needs a big open space. It needs to be a resource that we can use to develop jobs and the economy. But it needs to connect the primarily restaurant businesses on First Street with a new commercial center that's built along Railroad Avenue. And so it needs to be an open space that can be freely migrated, where we gather pedestrians who use that center, who use the town square daily to generate business and profitability for our downtown area. I think it's a great idea to put the town square in that area, but it is fragile. And one thing that happened tonight that I was disappointed in is the rejection of the idea of keeping the depot where it was, because it could be a nice historic exhibit museum that can show the culture to visitors and residents alike. Every time they go downtown, they can revisit maybe a changing exhibit in that little depot. But it would be a charming addition to a town square. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Bezos, I apologize. Apparently there was a misunderstanding that you had submitted written comments and that you had to leave. So my apologies.
No, don't start the time yet, but I had the comments are labeled for 3.0 from earlier in the meeting. I'm sorry. You have a very good city clerk. She's very patient and very professional, I think. But
we thought that you'd submitted written comments instead, so I apologize.
Yeah, good evening. I wanted to echo what the previous speaker said about the town square. I really think you need to be rethinking this downtown plan. Maybe you can keep the same Lennar and Presidio, but you need to be rethinking it. You know, that depot, and you're going to hear from this a long time, for many years to come, about this, but that depot, there's no parcel in downtown Livermore has a longer land use. Since 1869, there has always been a depot on that spot. And the fact, like in San Francisco, that isn't it kind of neat when you discover a ship far from the waterfront in San Francisco and they put it on display? That's part of the idea there, that you know, there's a history that comes before. And I think was objectionable, and why this all needs to be slowed down, is the downtown specific plan said specifically in there, protected from relocation, except under very special circumstances. No city body has identified what those very special circumstances are. You know, the Planning Commission, Historic Preservation Committee, even the City Council. I was hoping that you would articulate something. What I've seen there in the resolution you passed, I'm going to look at again, it was just basically cobbling together something from the EIR and claiming it's just ridiculous. So what I have a problem with here, and you know, and I'm a native of this community, back when I was in high school, did the high school history back in 1991, I knew people who knew this town from the late 1800s. I've gone back to newspapers back, you know, to even before this town existed, and you know, they've been talking about it. So you know, and my concern is in taking this 20,000-foot level, you know, from a perspective of years later, looking back on this, I see a lot of greed, a lot of pride. I see a lot of politics. I mean, people who look like angels may actually not be angels. There's lots of shades of gray in this. And what disturbs me the most is a lack of principles. That downtown specific plan and the protections for historic resources were there for a reason, and they've just been thrown out. And I'm going to say, I'm not necessarily threatening this right now, but you deserve a big fat lawsuit, because I don't see principles, alternative facts, everything like that. You need someone to be looking over you beyond, you know, just the electorate. And, you know, sometimes you need, you know, you know, I can't find those findings. Ms. Neer, I'll probably be submitting you a public records request saying, you find the findings for me. I can't find it. What you're seeing here is politics. This train station has been railroaded, and it's here. I'm not even making this up. It's not conspiracy theory. I mean, the staff report for when the $2.5 million was awarded said, quote, relocating the railroad depot building will significantly enhance the value of the Livermore Village site, resulting in higher proceeds from the sale and development of the site. The train station is moved to create a clean slate for developer. It's wiping it out so you can create a faux history on it. And what I see is a lack of principles. And you know, the other thing too, I've gone to that bus station. You think there's graffiti happening where it is now in the open? That's a little habitat for hobos there at certain hours of the day. That train station, I don't think it's going to be safe there. And the $1 million, you've given it away. Could have been used for a downtown park, for that village square. You gave it away, and the staff didn't even talk about it here at all, because you like to hide things. So I think I'd like to see principles first.
Thank you, Mr. Bezos. Okay, with that, that's the last card that I have. Did you submit a card? You're holding a card in your hand. No, I do not have a card, but please, Mr. Caskey.
My apologies. I might have been no name in my haste.
No, it said no name.
So. Okay. I'm pretty sure that wasn't me.
They actually had written that across there.
And then no show on top of that. Good evening. Again,
unidentified speaker. They actually wrote unidentified speaker.
I like it. Thank you. I believe the recent election was a clear message to the city that the residents want to be involved at the beginning, not the end of the planning process for their downtown. And so I'm not sure how we claim to the public that we have heard them and that we are going to restart the process if we continue with the ENRA as it exists. I think what we did here was we heard priorities for open space, for parking relief, for heritage and arts engagement. We heard about an interest in a hotel. We even did hear about interest in residential, some interest in not having it, some interest in having it, and I think that'll be one of the really interesting creative solutions that we'll have to come up with. There may be an interesting creative community concept that we have to deal with. I appreciate the commitment and flexibility that I've heard tonight from Presidio, and I think there's no reason at all to imagine that they wouldn't be engaged in the process, and I look forward to seeing them again. But I don't think that extending the ENRA is the way to start that process. I remember during the campaign hearing from a couple of candidates that, well, we have heard from the public and Lennar is definitely off. And I don't think we necessarily need to say that Lennar is definitely off. I think that there's an opportunity here to open it up to everybody, but I believe that the community-focused process may make different developers interested or may cause us to weight the developers that we've already heard from differently. So I encourage you not to extend the ENRA. I look forward to accelerating the process, not slowing it down. I think we want to do it right. We want to do it as quickly as possible, but no more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caskey. Okay, so I'm looking here. I don't see any more cards. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Okay. Yes. Well, you actually have spoken.
Yeah. Am I allowed to respond?
Yeah, you have spoken. I can't give anybody else a second opportunity to speak. So thank you much for your comments. We certainly appreciate them, and they are part of the record. But if we start having everybody else answering everybody else's questions and comments, we may be here forever, and we wish to move ahead. So with that, I'm going to close the public comment period. I think there's been a tremendous amount of misunderstanding in the process, and this is one of the reasons I asked Mr. Spence about the process and where we were in the process. Because the reason that Lennar and Presidio were accepted back on May 23rd was not because of the project that they envisioned. Now, as Mr. Spence pointed out, the project that they presented at that initial time back in December, I believe it was, December-January timeframe, that was in response to the overarching large global ideas that the city had. And the reason that Lennar was selected, Lennar and Presidio, was not because of that vision that they presented. It was because they were believed to have the technical, managerial, and financial capacity to build whatever the community wanted. Whatever the community wanted. That they had the capacity to do that. I've seen a number of projects throughout California where a developer came in because they had all these great ideas, and then when the recession came, they left town, and there's a blighted ghost town development, which was never completed. So that was why Lennar was selected, is because they would be able to get whatever the vision was completed. I was intrigued by some of the comments that, that this does not reflect anything that our community would allow, or doesn't, what the community wants doesn't match what Lennar has proposed. This is the wrong direction. As I said, we haven't had a chance to negotiate with them. We didn't accept any development or accept any density back on on August 8th. We directed staff to bring back more information and more data so that we could ultimately develop a project that the community wanted. We weren't too off base, because on July 14th, even though we've heard it said that this wasn't reflecting anything that the community would allow, on July 14th, the community group plan had 251 housing units on this 8 acres. And the original vision that Lennar proposed was 260 units. The plans were only apart by 9 housing units. And to say that this didn't reflect anything that the community would allow, well, the plan from the community group was only 9 housing units short, and we had 400 people supporting what the community group was proposing. So it wasn't that far off base, but the plan is ultimately to find out what the community, and that's why we haven't negotiated, is because we're still developing the data so that we can create the plan that the community is willing, that the community wants. And that's we're in the middle of this process. So we're a long ways from completing this. The idea that the downtown specific plan was started in 2004, yeah, I was on the General Plan Review Committee at the time. And in 2010, there were 80 people that stood in this room and supported a 9-story building and 400 housing units on this very site. And as late as July of 2016, the community group supported a 7-story hotel and 251 housing units on this site. Yeah, 251 housing units and a 7-story hotel. Well, the community didn't want that, and we heard that. And that's why the council directed staff to go back, work with Lennar, work with the community, work with the data, and come back so that we could then start negotiating the plan that we believe ultimately that the community wants and that Lennar can build. That's why they were selected, not because of the plan they envisioned, it's because they could build the plan that the community wanted. And we haven't even started the negotiations yet. So I just wanted to get a little bit of history on this, because we were very close not that long ago. And now we're continuing to work this negotiation process so that we ultimately come up with what the community wants and what a company has the capacity to complete once it gets started. So that's my take on the history. And with that, I'd be willing to entertain additional comments from the council. Councilmember, I'll start on this side this time. Councilmember Warner.
You know, this is a really tough one. And I think we went through the selection process. We vetted these two through, a hard set of choices. We thought about it, and we concluded that they had the corporate substance to deliver the project. And this is, and especially with respect to the hotel, this is the best project or possibility of a project that we've ever seen. And it's something the community has wanted a long time. And I also agree that if you really understand where we were in the process, we hadn't aligned on a plan. I'll say that there was a lot of rhetoric in not only the national election, but here. I think there was a distortion of the reality. And I think that as a result, though, the community became polarized. And I think that's very unfortunate. And I think that, and so I think it's incumbent upon us to try and figure out how to work together and get a right solution. And I still, you can hear it tonight, there are people who are still spun up on this thing, and as far as I'm concerned, not being completely unemotional and rational. But that's what we're dealing with. So we've heard from them that they're willing to work with the community, but the question I think we've got here is the community willing to work with them? And that's what really bothers me. I'll tell you frankly, I didn't want to have to be deciding this tonight. In my best of worlds, we would go through the workshops. We would have the chance for the selection of the development partner and what we want to do separated. But I'm afraid that from what I've seen in the various meetings, it's very hard for people to do that. And that's just the way I see it. So I mean, I can see yes extended, yes not. So I would, as I say, I would prefer that we weren't doing this. But the question was brought before us, and I think we've now reopened lots of references to the election. I'm not sure how many voters, but I don't think we had 30,000 people vote in the election here, right? So I don't know how. I mean, numbers are, we have alternative facts here. So but again, it just really bothers me, and this is tough. So here's, and I come back to, can the community work with them? I think we've got a couple of very good, solid partners that have the wherewithal and tremendous willingness to work with us. And to let this slip away because of how we got here, it just pains me. So here's my suggestion. And I don't know if the rest of you would go for this, but we're going to go through the workshops. And what I would do or suggest here is that we do extend this, but not for 9 months. But we get into this workshop and we find out whether the community can come together. And if we can't come together because of this distraction and the inability to separate the selection of the partners and the actual plan, then I think we'll be back at it. But I'm willing, if the community is willing to be open, we just don't want to let this really good opportunity slip away. So that's my suggestion, is that we extend it, we go through the process of getting the further input, and we see how it goes.
Vice Mayor?
Sure. I agree with a lot of what Councilmember Warner just said, but I do have some specific comments, and it's related to the hotel. Because throughout this process, I think in general, the residents have agreed that we would like a hotel downtown. I brought up at the July meetings, I brought up some questions about circulation and parking and how it would work on the east side, and also brought up the fact that I would like to hear how it would work on the west side. And I'm very encouraged to hear Presidio bring that up tonight, that they would look at the west side and how that would work. So I think in terms of the low-hanging fruit with this project, and it is unfortunate what we've gone through, I think we can all agree that parking garage and hotel are on the top of the list. So how do we retain Presidio and continue to work with them, and yet still get the public input and the questions answered in a meaningful way? I think it's better to have an actual hotel developer at the table than hiring a hotel consultant, because as many of you know, whatever you hire a consultant for, typically that's what you're going to get. There's a goal in mind, and if they can make it work on paper, that's great, but it may not necessarily meet reality. So I'm very, very encouraged to hear Presidio say that they want to continue and maybe visit us 51 or 52 times. But at the same time, an ENRA in my mind, and it was mentioned in the staff report and staff presentation, that's refining the project. And I just don't know if we have a project. We're still arguing over vision and features. And to me, when you enter into an ENRA, you have at least a general idea of what you want, but I don't think we're really there with the other side other than a hotel in an unspecified location. Well, I could say either east or west side. It looks like it's either of the two corners. And I would encourage, and I expected that the first set of workshops, I don't know what staff has planned, but would focus on the hotel. And I need to know why it would work in either location and what we would get in either location before we proceed. So, it's difficult for me to extend negotiating agreements across the board for a project when we clearly don't have a defined project yet. So it's a tough decision. We can spend another couple nights talking about it, and I think that's what the workshops are for. But I would encourage Presidio to stick with us no matter what happens. Please. I mean, come up here and pinky promise you. I don't know what we need to do, but we didn't necessarily have. People said that we had 14. I don't know if that was a completely accurate number. 14 developers apply. I can't recall. 15. How many hoteliers did we have? In my mind, we had 1.5 apply. We had one very solid developer for the hotel, and that's who we chose. And we had another that maybe could have gotten it together, but so we don't necessarily have hoteliers knocking down our door begging us and competitively bidding to build a hotel. So the fact that you're here and you're willing to work with us, thank you very much. I just hope that you're not discouraged either way, or you wouldn't be discouraged one way, but if it doesn't go your way, you wouldn't be discouraged. I think you know what I mean. So I'm going to stop.
Councilor Carlin.
Yes, thank you. I, for a long time, have been very supportive of a downtown hotel. Less so about residential on the old Lucky site. So my support would be for extending the ENRA for the hotel and Presidio, and I understand from our city staff that we could do that. So I think we can do that. So that's certainly where my passion lies. The 30,000 votes, I remind you that they got the vote for 2 people. So some of those people that voted for the 2 of us, voted for both of us. That's one person. So I wouldn't say that we had an enormous mandate from 30,000 votes. Don't get the wrong impression. But I do think, I think Presidio is a first-class operation. They're very enthusiastic about it. I've been very impressed with their willingness to work with us and the thought of not a priori deciding it's going to go on the east or the west side, but thinking about what the possibilities might be. So I would support extending it for Presidio.
Councilmember Coomber.
Thank you. Well, this is the first time I've spoken on this issue from this side of the microphone. Usually it was from that mic right out there. And I'm glad to be able to do so because I would tend to agree with Council Members Spadowski and Carling. There are 2 things that can be equally true when you talk about a project, that because we don't believe that there should be as much housing as was spoken about downtown, that there shouldn't be a hotel. I think a hotel is a necessary piece of what's going to make downtown even better, even a more spectacular place to hang out. And I'm one that hangs out there a lot. I could entertain separating the 2 factions as extending it one and not the other too. And in fact, would probably go that way. I just, it's funny that this issue came to this, isn't it, huh? We turned into a one-issue town, and we're not that. As often as I tried to change things around back in November about speaking about public safety and everything else, this was really the either unifier or polarizer, depending how you looked on it. But it's done enough, and now we have to settle on something that's going to work for a lot of people. There are things that are going to happen down the line in terms of workforce housing and such really good things are going to happen around town. And I think a hotel's got to be one of them. And since we're not committed to a compass point right now on where it's going to be downtown, I'd support extending the ENRA with Presidio. However, I just don't think, we heard it really loud and really clear, and I heard it many times a day. We're back in October and September, that we just don't need housing downtown. So I don't know if Lennar is the best fit down there. I would probably want to let that expire.
Well, again, just to sort of round this out, the reason that Lennar and Presidio were selected was because they were believed the most capable of building and completing the project that the community wanted. And we're in the process right now of, and I agree with the Vice Mayor that, yeah, we don't have a project yet. Well, that was the whole point. The point was to find out what the market would support, and then find out, knowing that, the amenities, the additional amenities within the community that the community really wanted. How much open space? We had heard originally that the community did want housing. We then heard that they wanted less housing. So ultimately, to finally determine what it is that the community really wanted in the downtown, and then find out what that delta is. The delta between what the market would support and the amenities the community wanted. The city bought that land with $14 million in affordable housing funds. So how much we pay back, how much we used to create a park, how much we used to build parking. So what that delta between what the market would support and what the community wanted, and how we would finance that, how we would pay for that difference. So that was part of the development process. That was part of the negotiation process. And this was picking the company that would have the capacity to build what the community wanted. So we're in the process right now of working out the plan the community wants, and we've got two companies that can build that plan that the community wants. We haven't finalized that yet. We're a long way from that, and we're in the middle of negotiating that. So I would, at this point, I agree with Councilmember Warner. Maybe not 9 months, perhaps 6 months, three months, but to get us through the first couple of workshops as we begin to refine that plan, because we've got two companies that can build what the community wants. We were told that this plan had been finalized, not by a long shot. We never voted to approve this. We directed council, directed staff, the council directed staff to go back and collect the data that we needed to finalize a good project that the community wanted. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now. So I would support extending this for, split the difference, 4 months. And then we could come back and see where we are in the process. But that's what this is. This is a process. And this is what we signed up for 2 years ago, was to go through this process. And I would not support abandoning the process halfway through it. So I would support what Councilmember Warner and what what Vice Mayor Spadowski sort of alluded to.
So yeah, playing the politician there, but.
Can I just make one statement really quickly? We're definitely amenable to any site plan. We just want the opportunity to study it further. That's all we're asking.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. Thank you for your comments, but I knew he'd be the first one up.
So just a question of staff, the 9-month duration for the extension, that was what is anticipated for public workshops and coming to some clarity about the issue? What's the reasoning for the 9 months?
9 months was the request of the applicants on that.
Okay. So, if we were to focus on the hotel, approximately, I know I'm putting you on the spot here with the workshops, and the workshops will go just wonderfully. I'm convinced. They'll be the most beautiful workshops ever. I guarantee it. Wait, I'm starting to sound like somebody else. They'll be huge. Everybody will be envious of our workshops.
Ever.
Yeah, but workshops are going well. What do we think the time frame would be if we did focus? I'm not saying I'm not trying to dictate what we're. But I guess I am. But we're trying to dictate how the workshops go. But if we were to focus on the hotel, 3 months, 4 months, until we have some clarity, hopefully, of what we would look at?
So your staff is a bit of a disadvantage here, having not heard some detailed input from the entire council on process. Sure. But, a time frame, it would surprise staff if you get clarity within a 3-month time frame. I think, however, that within a 5 or 6 month time frame you would have more clarity. It depends on what your definition of that is.
Right.
I think you have identified, candidly, that there seemed to be slightly more agreement on the need for a hotel than the need for residential housing, although that's not universal. Clearly there is quite a bit of interest in the location of the hotel and even some interest in the scale of it, how large it should be. But if your question was if the process were somewhat bifurcated and dealt with a hotel, I think your time frame you're looking there is 4 to 6 months. But part of the issue there has to do with the design of that process, and the number of times you're out in the community, and then the number of times you're back to council on that process. An ENRA, as you know, can be extended at any time. At any time, at that point. So it's a floor, not a ceiling. From that perspective, it's the minimum, not the maximum time you may wish to have somebody involved in the process.
So I'll just add a few things. I think the hotel is the highest priority, and I alluded to that in the earlier comments. I'm not sure that we have a sense of the community that we're at zero housing. I mean, the community group, we were last time maybe at the half with 100 housing. So the thing that I think is difficult here is we haven't had the workshops. We don't have clarity on the extent of the housing. And then to potentially discard a partner without knowing that is kind of, you're talking about getting the cart before the horse. It's kind of making a decision without knowing where we're really trying to go. So that bothers me. So that's why I suggested extending it for a shorter period of time for both, so that we could get through at least a couple of workshops and understand where the community is coming from. But to just arbitrarily say, well, we're going to zero housing and we know that, I don't think we do know that at this point. So, if need be, I'm certainly better than nothing is to extend it on the hotel. I think we might want to think carefully about before we just completely discard it on the housing side, until we at least have some sense of where the community really is on that.
I didn't mean to imply that I thought we should have zero housing. That wasn't what I meant at all. What I meant was that I thought we should extend the hotel ENRA and undertake the workshops to get a sense from the community as the amount of housing that people would tolerate on the Lucky site. So not zero housing.
Right, but we don't have to. I mean, we have the ability to extend this until we can get a little bit more sense of things through the workshop. So what I'm saying is, by implication, since we did go through a fairly extensive process to winnow down all these people, and we've got a partner that can do the commercial as well as the housing, lined up, to just say, well, we're just going to cut it off right now, and we don't have to. We can extend it a couple of months. We just don't have to say nothing at this point.
If I may, I was at the workshops as a citizen, as a resident. I don't think the council attended the workshop where we met with the developers, and I guess there was a facilitator there that ran things, and I know that because we ran into them at the...
We were at the beginning of it.
Okay.
A couple of us
Well,
were.
From my point of view, to say there was never a plan, then I would have to ask why, when I'm sitting at a table, where I'm asking about where the traffic is going to go, and we'll figure it out. Which of these 4 plans do you want these buildings to be? So somebody had a plan in mind, regardless of what the council was aware of. That's what we were dealing with in our workshops. So already they were steering us towards building design, planning where things were going to be, where the footprints of the buildings were going to be. So it sounds to me like somebody thought there was a plan. And that's why it's surprising for me to hear now that there was no plan. Because I was amazed at what I heard at that workshop. I didn't expect council to be there. I don't believe, like you said, you may have been there for a short time. But if you had sat at any of those tables and they did not know you were a council member, you would have heard those things. And it just seemed, again, we're back to that old cart before the horse thing. I'm trying to ask about parking or where traffic's going to go or anything else, and it was, well, which design do you like?
Right.
And that's what we were into. And so
I agree with you.
So that's what a resident may have, who attended those workshops, probably got the impression that there was more than no plan out there.
Right. So I agree with what you're saying, and I don't necessarily think that the way that was positioned was certainly suboptimal in my mind. And as I said at the very outset, because of the way things happen, the fundamental question is, can the community work with these people? And I think we've got certain things that have to be undone. But when I think we were talking about whether there was a plan, whether there was an agreed upon plan, there was something to discuss, and I don't necessarily think it was presented in as much of an idea as opposed to the perception you got as a plan. So I agree with you that very well could have happened. The only thing what I'm saying is, do you think that can we learn from that experience, or do we have to start completely over on that side? So I'm just saying, do we?
I think we did learn, and we need to start over.
Well, I think that my feeling is not necessarily to start over. We have some.
Excuse me, we can't hear you because of disruptions.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, if I may. We request that the council is actually engaging their deliberations right now. They did have the opportunity. You did have the opportunity to speak. I would request the same courtesy to allow them to actually have their deliberations as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So appreciate your clarification and stepping in there. So I keep going back to, we're in the middle of a process. We have the developers that can take us through this process. What we're looking for is an extension to get us through the workshops. And rather than abandon the process, let's start refining that community vision. And we've heard from Lennar, we've heard from Presidio, they want to work with the community. And I agree with what Councilmember Warner says. The community, if it is willing to work with them through these workshops to refine that community vision, I'd be willing to support the extension of the negotiating agreement with both.
So I'll just say this before Councilmember Vice Mayor Spadowski gets in there. I think, again, the fundamental question is, can the community work with them? We have 2 new council members, and I'm hearing, I think, pretty loud and clear that your opinion is, of that community segment that got energized here, the answer is no. Am I hearing you very clearly? That with respect to...
That's my point of view.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Okay.
Yes.
And
yes.
So I think there it is. We met earlier with the developers. I said I didn't want to be here, I said this is where I anticipated this is where we were going to go, and I have no desire to have this kind of battle be in the middle of the workshops. So if the opinion is that we're done, then I'm there with respect to the residential component. I mean, I just want to be straight up that it's just going to be so hard for us to agree on what we're going to do. I don't want the bad history. If we can't get past it, we can't get past it. So
what I'm hearing is that there is no longer any residential component in the downtown on this 8 acres.
No, that's not what we're saying at all.
No, what I'm hearing very loud and clear, and I'm quite amenable to it at this point, is that we extend Presidio, not Lennar, and that also I think we focus on the hotel, and that we later pick up what we're going to do in residential. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I think that one of the other things that we did in the workshops that weren't optimal, in that not only did we present something as maybe a done deal, as you pointed out, the other thing is I think this is so complex to try and deal with all the parts simultaneously is near impossible. So I am highly agreeable that we solve the hotel problem and then we let the rest figure it out after that.
If I could just make a point, one of the things that was confusing in those workshops is as people came in, they were presented a second fully fleshed out plan which had not been considered by the city. And that was very confusing for the people because...
No, I wasn't confused.
Excuse me.
Come on, guys.
The city council is deliberating now. People believed that this was a plan that had been proposed to the city. That plan had not been proposed to the city. There was no developer that was proposing to build it, but yet it was presented as a fully fleshed out plan. And I had heard from a number of folks that thought that this was one of the plans that was being considered and had been presented to the city. In fact, there was no developer and no hotelier that was proposing to build any of that. So that was the point of confusion, is that people were seeing multiple plans when there were not multiple plans. One plan was being developed, but another plan was being presented as fully baked. So that was one of the points of confusion.
It was confusing to me when, if there was no plan, I'm going back to what section of math, then I heard a motion by a council member, Spadowski, to reduce that no plan by half, which was then, so I don't know what that vote was on then. If there was no plan to build X number of units.
Excuse me, I'm speaking, you were talking about the July 14th meeting.
Yeah, but
now you're talking about the August 8th
no, but
meeting.
there's another thing. There was
no motion at the July 14th.
Okay, well, I didn't have the date down then, but I was talking about the workshop, and then I was referring to if there was no plan. If a plan hadn't been proposed to the council before,
this was the original Lennar response to the request for proposal.
Well, I was there for that
by the
too.
city, right?
Mr. Mayor.
And I was there
Yes,
at the workshop.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think we're straying from the question that is before the council this evening during your deliberations. The question is whether or not to grant the request to extend the ENRA.
Thank you for bringing us back on board.
That's true. We're getting off track.
Can I get in just
sure?
As I said before, I believe we had one qualified hotel applicant. I believe we had many qualified residential applicants. I believe that we are the community is closer to agreeing on a hotel than they are the rest of the site, whatever that may entail. Water park, car dealership, I don't know. But I do know that, saw somebody raise a hand for a water park, is it?
No, that was the car dealership.
Car dealership, yes. So what I do know is that based on the community input, I am hearing more people agree on a hotel, and I would propose that we extend the ENRA with Presidio for a period of 4 months, so we can see where we're at in about that period. I would entertain 3 months, not sold on anything. in order to have a qualified developer at the table to help us make these informed decisions about location and size and everything that we haven't really refined yet. So that would be my motion.
I'll second.
I'm open to discussion on the number of months.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. So
How many months is it now? Your motion.
Okay, so let's put it at 4 months. If somebody has a problem with that, please speak now or forever hold your peace.
I would say at least 4 months. 4 months is a good term.
Okay. So with that motion, there is, you're excluding Lennar, so Lennar is not included in the motion. So this would be to extend the exclusive negotiating rights agreement with Presidio, but not with Lennar.
Correct, and the goal is the RFP. If it limited it to, I believe the RFP specified East Side Hotel. This is, an agreement to study everything related to the hotel. I'm getting a stare down from Jason. I don't know what he's.
No, the one thing I would request is with your motion, if you would entertain giving direction to the city manager the opportunity, the direction to negotiate that extension. Or if you wanted that to return to you at a later date.
Okay, that would be,
essentially, it would be the document you have before you, the hotel parts of it, with a 4-month extension, as we understand the motion on the table. And the only question is whether the council wishes to execute that document, or you want to delegate that authority, signature authority, under those terms to the manager.
In order for you to negotiate the month term, or just the
No, essentially, in order to execute the document.
Okay, so it would be for the city manager to execute the document for a 4-month period.
With the city attorney's approval as to form.
With the city attorney's approval as to form, as he's staring me down. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, with that, I'll call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we want to restate the motion, or do we know what that is?
I moved for the city manager
4 months. Okay.
execute an agreement with Presidio for exclusive negotiating rights for a 4-month period.
City clerk, got that? Okay, very good. Okay, I'm sorry.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Is there a motion for extending the ERA for Lennar? You can say no. Okay. There's no motion? Okay. So with that, we've extended the ENRA for Presidio for 4 months with the authority to the city manager. And I would like to thank all of you for your input tonight, all of your comments. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing all of you in the workshops and hope that you all continue to stay engaged. Thank you. Now, moving on to 5.01. We are at 10:30, so I believe I have to poll the council to see if we go ahead to hopefully complete by 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay. Sure. Polling the council. You guys up for 11? Sure. Okay.
Very good.
So let's see here. Okay. A minute. Okay, item 5.01. This is the Chestnut Square, the vesting tentative contract and design review and consistency determination. Good heavens, as I live and breathe, Fran Reisner is back. Yes!
Honorable Mayor and Council, you have two of our staff, which you've identified, our project manager, Lori Parks, who is an associate planner with us, and, of course, Francis Reisner, who has returned from being far away from us as our housing program manager.
Welcome back.
Who are prepared to give you a staff report. Given the late hour, we're going to propose to abbreviate your staff report a little bit on that. MidPen, our nonprofit partner, is also available to give a presentation, but candidly, that's at your discretion as well. Being our partner, they would be certainly very willing to tailor that to your needs given the hour this evening. And with that, we'll let Lori start off with a very brief synopsis of what they want. And at that point, if we could have some direction from the chair as to whether you'd want a presentation from MidPen as well.
Thank you.
So you want me to begin the full thing or? Okay. So good evening, members of the City Council. The project before you tonight is Chestnut Square, a mixed-income, multi-generational residential development. And the pointer is somewhere. Okay. To switch it? Switch the slide?
No, that's not, that won't advance, that's a pointer.
Do they advance this? You want to say Bailey? Ah, there we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. So the project site is located at the corner of North P and Chestnut Street at the northern edge of downtown. It's approximately 5 acres and currently has a commercial building on the western half of the site. The site is located within the North Side Neighborhood Plan area within the Downtown Specific Plan. This area allows for a range of residential types intended to support the revitalization of downtown. So north of the site is the residential neighborhood zoned T4N. Neighborhood serving shopping centers are located to the west, and to the south is a mix of downtown uses, including Granada Bowl and Station Square. The city acquired the project site for the purpose of affordable housing development in 2010 and 2012. And in 2013, the city selected Mid-Peninsula Housing Corporation, or MidPen, as the nonprofit developer to prepare a master plan for a mix of affordable and market rate housing. So the site plan before you shows the proposed subdivision. It will create 46 lots for 44 townhomes and 2 apartment buildings. An internal access road runs through the middle of the site. The apartment building located along North P Street would have 72 affordable rental units for seniors. The apartment building located near the center of the site would have 42 affordable rental units for families. Both the senior and family buildings would have 1 level of below-ground parking, with some spaces along the surface. Most of the townhouses are located along alleys off the access road, and although 4 of them are located off a driveway off Chestnut here, MidPen has partnered with Warmington Residential for the construction of the market rate for sale townhouses, and that arrangement helps provide the necessary financing to deliver the affordable units. I'm going to go through the open space a little quickly here. Basically, the project includes a variety of open spaces, including a courtyard, outdoor seating, a children's play area, several amenities like that. It also includes a 14-foot tall sound wall on the southern boundary adjacent to the railroad. So following the entitlement process, the city will dispose the site to MidPen. MidPen would retain the 2 parcels for the apartment buildings and sell the eastern portion to Warmington. Warmington would then build the townhomes and sell the lots to individual owners at market rate. In subsequent phases, MidPen will build, operate, and maintain the apartment buildings and offer the rental units at below market rates to lower income households. So the project qualifies for a density bonus up to 35% over the baseline density and 3 developer incentives under the city's development code and state law. So they're requesting a 32% density bonus and 3 incentives, including an exception to the height limits, a reduction in parking requirements, and a reduction in the required setback for one of the townhome units. The reduction in the parking ratio applies to the senior building only, which the city has allowed for similar projects in town. The project meets all other city standards, including the development standards for the North Side neighborhood area. So I'll also go through these pretty quickly. MidPen does have more information on the design here. But basically, the affordable housing is consistent with the design standards and guidelines for residential development downtown. This shows you the corner of Chestnut and North P, the senior building. And here's a view of the building with addition of landscaping. So the trees along North P, street trees would be preserved, and a double row street trees would be provided to enhance the streetscape and provide some screening. Also note that the 4th-story does step back from the street to help minimize the visual prominence from Chestnut. So like the affordable housing, the townhomes were also designed to provide a sensitive transition to the neighborhood, with the neighborhood to the north. So first, the townhouses are oriented perpendicular to Chestnut, which allows the end units to resemble single-family homes when viewed from the street. The units along Chestnut Street are limited to 2 stories, while the remaining units are 3 stories. So this rendering represents views from the residence across Chestnut Street. For the purpose of this perspective, the existing houses are not shown here. But overall, the proposed design complements the adjacent neighborhood and creates a harmonious and interesting streetscape across the site. The initial study prepared for the project determined that the proposed development will not result in any significant environmental impacts with implementation of mitigation measures. Overall, the project supports city goals for affordable housing and downtown revitalization and is consistent with the general plan. The consistency determination is required for the disposition of city-owned property. So in conclusion, staff recommends adoption of the environmental document and approval of these applications. And we have Darcy Kremen with Michael Baker International to answer questions about the CEQA document. We also have the Mid-Penn team here who would like to give a presentation, a brief one, and staff is available to answer questions. Sorry for going so fast.
Questions? In the senior housing, are there elevators in the senior housing?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, with that, if there's no questions, I'll open up the public comment period. I have 4 cards. Millie Seibel unfortunately had to leave since the agenda was reorganized, but she makes the comment that there is a need for affordable senior housing, and she speaks as a member of the board of directors of the Interfaith Housing. So they have a waiting list of over 300 seniors, and she speaks that there's a great need for this. And Millie used to work for the city, so I give her a little shout out there for that. Jason Bezos, Rochelle Snedecor, and John Argula. Mr. Bezos. We're giving you a workout tonight.
I just had a question mostly about where the money's coming from. I guess there was money that was city money that was used to buy the parcel. I can't tell if it was RDA money or was the RDA trust fund money. But my other concern out of this, and I don't know if this is the proper forum to ask this, but with the depot agreement earlier today, $250,000 city funds are being used from the low-income trust fund, the Fund 611, and I'm trying to figure out when you're spending the money for that, it seems to me it ought to be spent on affordable housing rather than moving a train station. So that was kind of my concern of, first of all, how the money works, the city money that's in this project was dealing with affordable housing, and then secondly, that $250,000, just why it's allowed to be used to move a train station instead of to actually provide actual affordable housing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bezos, and I'm sure that somebody can give you an answer much better than I could. Mr. Spence or Mr. Roberts?
So the funds in that case were utilized to purchase, I believe it was either the property that the depot sat on. The depot was kind of an interesting case where the property and the depot itself were owned separately. And so the funds were utilized to purchase the property just as affordable housing funds were used to purchase that entire site.
And ultimately, if housing is not placed on the site, those funds need to be paid back, and that's been part of the overall process downtown. We'll work through that for the overall site. In this particular case, the funding for the actual site came from a number of different sources. Part of the land was dedicated in lieu by a developer. That was generally the eastern part of the site here. The rest of the site was acquired with low-income housing funds, the in lieu fees. And that was done during a bankruptcy proceeding for the shopping center owner. And the various portions of the site were acquired over a variety of time, ultimately assembled. But those were the 2 main sources. There were not RDA funds involved in this site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but I wanted to, I understand to purchase the property, but to actually be using affordable housing, low-income housing funds to move a train station, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, that was what the payback for the acquisition of the property, because it was used with low-income housing funds to purchase the property. Okay, Thank you, Mr. Bezos. Rochelle Snedecor, Don Argula.
Rochelle Snedeker, Livermore Downtown Inc. Very, very, very excited about this project. Long overdue. We have a huge housing crisis in our community for our workforce housing. Couple of comments. I'm like, just build it tomorrow. It's kind of comment one. Affordable senior. I myself am at the age where we're looking at these things for our parents. It's a fun time in our life to be having to be concerned about that. And there is a shortage to bring our families back closer to us. So that's one point. So that would be a beautiful piece. Workforce housing. I'd like to request that when I mentioned earlier tonight, a fact funding, a fact place where we can always find the facts. One of the biggest facts that needs to be out there is, what does affordable housing mean in Livermore? We have a huge amount of conversations with people in the community that when you say affordable housing, they automatically think, not working, Section 8 housing, what are you doing? This is, to qualify in Livermore is not low income based on real standards. So if we could start getting those figures out to put people at rest, my understanding is it's $90,000 a year income to be low income or affordable. When I've had this conversation and mentioned that to some people that have complained about the possibility of affordable housing being in their neighborhood, they quickly find out that they would not be able to afford to get an affordable house. So they're lucky to have gotten in when they did. So we need to be really clear on those facts so that we're really getting the true information out there. I'd also like one more thing, and I know we've been talking to Eric Uringer about this, the point system for qualification. I'm not sure exactly how that works. I'm going to be educated on that very quickly. But I know that we look at people applying, and we've always looked at, teachers, firemen, policemen, which is phenomenal to get that piece of our, our safety living within our community. But we'd like to get that broader and looking at hospitality industry so that people that are serving us and the talent that we need if we're going to be this destination for our community to have the places they want to shop and dine, we need those people to be able to live here too. The traffic, the commute is horrific. So we're losing real talent to communities outside of the Bay Area. Also, if there could be the provision that maybe you need to, extra points if you already have a job in Livermore. So that we've already got these people coming on the freeway to get here. They're coming every day anyway, so let's get them living here and let them have some extra points in that system as you're looking for qualification for those units. That's it.
Thank you. Don Argula and Chester Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, Dawn Argula, speaking on behalf of the Livermore Valley Chamber of Commerce as its CEO, in support of the Chestnut Square Mid-Penn Development Project. This is a beautiful example of a mixed income housing community, 152 units for our seniors and our families, market rate and apartments. This city is preparing to welcome some new businesses that are also bringing along with them hundreds of good-paying jobs. They're mid-level and higher. And ideally, it would be great if those people could live here and pay into our system as well. So projects such as this will help make a dent in the housing need that gives those people an opportunity to live in the city in which they work. So we support this project and we urge you to approve this item. And then also, I'm sorry, but on the earlier item, I did have a letter that I wanted to enter into record that I didn't give, and I'm a little disappointed by the vote, but life is full of disappointments, right? So, but anyway, I want to give this to the clerk so she can give it to you.
Please give that to
Thank you.
the city clerk. And Chester Moore. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I'd like to. I live fairly near there. I drive Chestnut a lot to get downtown, and I'm all in support of this project. I waded through 400 pages of supplementary materials, looking at this thing, trying to scrutinize it to see if it had a place for a stick of grass. And I did see a playground there. There was a monkey bar kind of thing on one small lot, and then a grassy area where kids could play or croquet or whatever. But it wasn't, the question I would really have is this development different from what we're seeing in the downtown area along First Street, where I didn't see a stick of grass anywhere, is this development, it seemed to me to be very nice. The setbacks were nice, the front, people living in the houses across Chestnut from it would look up and they'd see a two-story building because there was a setback for the taller stories, and yet they filled it with high-density housing. And it seems to have all the elements. It seems to be multi-generational. So it's the kind, it did seem to be, to me, very attractive. And I hope that it's perhaps implementing requirements that the city is imposing. I would like to see more grass areas so that the people with families or who have children will have a place that they can safely go to in the near vicinity and actually find some grass to play on. And so we need more of that, I think. But we have this problem of trying to accommodate all the housing that we need to develop. But this particular project did seem to meet my scrutiny to the extent that I could do it with 400 pages of materials. But it did seem to cover all the economic classes as well as we could with the affordable housing elements and the provisions for seniors. So it's especially attractive that it's intergenerational. The whole project is sort of like all in one. And that area, you know, that area has been an eyesore for a long time, and the people that live nearby sort of deserve to have at least living in a nice neighborhood. Whether it's affordable to the same people or not, I don't know. But it's nice that their whole neighborhood is getting some attention. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment period. And something that did not come up but always comes up on these projects is that the traffic is actually going to be reduced. A fully subscribed shopping center on that site would generate almost 2,900 trips a day, and this project is going to generate somewhere around 730. But with seniors, they tend to drive even less, so it may actually be less than that. So, any more questions on the issue? Vice Mayor, comments?
Are we starting comments?
Sure.
Okay, sure. I just wanted to thank staff and Mid-Penn and Warmington Homes. I don't think we didn't have enough time to get into some of the details tonight, but the tremendous amount of work and all of the moving pieces to get a project like this together. My first home was right off of North P, so I drove that street every day and drove by the site, and I think it's just a great improvement. Something that we desperately need in town, and I'd be more than happy to make the motion when the time comes, and also we can definitely make the findings to support all the actions necessary. So thank you very much.
Comments?
Yeah, I'd just say that I was very impressed with the team. Lori did a great job, and I think it's a great project as well.
Councilor Coomer?
This is what I look for when I look for a project where we have housing that's affordable. We have places for seniors to go. We have places for people with wheels who can't climb stairs up to the second, third, and fourth floor to get that we can go there. My parents are both elderly, so I look in the mirror now and I can probably cop to that myself. But to encourage them to come out here, and everything they see being built is 2 stories and stairs, and this is a perfect opportunity for them to get down here within walking distance, because they like to walk everywhere. But I see that happening with a lot of families everywhere. I see an opportunity too to have Livermore city employees, teachers, police officers, firemen. These are opportunities for them to get in line and get. Maybe somebody mentioned that earlier in a comment about points. About we could keep some of our staff in town there. We keep some of those dollars at home. We make it easier for them to get to work. You take them off the freeway. All these values and visions collide sometimes with a project like this, and I'm glad we were able to put it together, and I really appreciate it. It's I couldn't have written it up if I had a blank piece of paper. Thank you.
Mr. Warner?
I think it's a great project and what we really need in town, and we should get another one right after this too. Right? I think it's worth pointing out that this was a lot of work to be put together, and even this vote tonight doesn't assure this, if I'm correct. And that what's very important is that we have a very good partner here, because the some of the tax credits have to be applied for; they're not guaranteed. So this is this is a lot of work, and it still will continue to be a lot of work. But we're, I think, quite hopeful that it will succeed. Just put that little caution in there, but it's very important to have got a good partner here, which we have, and the questions earlier about where's all the money coming from and going to. I think it's quite complicated. So I just want to also congratulate you on having put a really wonderful project together.
A lot of moving pieces on this one, and certainly appreciate the creativity of staff and also our partners on this project. So thank you very much. It was a long process, but thank you for sticking with it. I think this is going to be something that really we can be proud of, and saw some modifications that have been made based on concerns from some of the council, and I certainly appreciate the way that you're able to quickly address those, and I think it makes for it's going to be a really good project. So with that, I'd entertain a motion.
Sure. I'd like to.
I'll also move.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Warner.
I'll second then.
Okay, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. So with that, with a total of 7 minutes to go here, we move to matters initiated and report outs. So we've covered everything, right? Matters initiated. Nothing got.
Correct. So you have 7.01 left on your. You only have 7.01 left on your agenda.
Right. Yeah. That's the only thing. We got 8 minutes. We can roll with it. Okay. Let's go with Councilmember Coomber.
Are we reporting?
We're reporting out, and
right.
matters initiated.
All right. Well, let's report out.
Minutes.
We're the two newest members of the council were at the League of California Cities new mayors and council members conference last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Great conference.
And it was enlightening. I talk loud, so I have to make sure this is on. We learned a lot. We went through a lot of things that I had learned at my time at LARPD, but such topics as effective advocacy and key city issues, working with your city manager and staff, which is going to be an important. Well, we get along so far, but every day we had a full slate of issues that we were all required to sit in, and eye-openers as we heard stories from all over the state, from towns as small as Point Arena to places across the bay in San Mateo and Half Moon Bay. I got to know a lot of people. It was a great opportunity for networking for us both, I believe. I think you'd go along with that. Sure. Yeah. At Colma, we got to sit next to the gentleman from Colma most of the time, and he was great. 8,500 silent constituents.
15, yeah, that's right. 1,500 noisy ones and 8,500 silent.
It was a lot of fun. But what we learned, especially that last session, they left us with maintaining the public trust, council ethics, as when we had learned the Brown Act, which of course we should know by now anyway. Right? You got that? Yeah. But it was a great way to end the session. 3 days of really good, long, strong meetings with a eager bunch of people and a lot of ideas floating around out there. We know all about how Crescent City is going to move into the 22nd century now. So it was really kind of fun to talk to all these people and where they're going and where they've been and learn so much from some real experts. Anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to add just a couple of things. One is that one interesting thing I took from it is when you ask these folks from other cities throughout the state, north to south, what some of their issues are, they're almost all development and land use issues.
Traffic and housing.
Well, that too, but I mean, it was quite common. And the other thing that I would say that when they found out that we were from Livermore, I heard two things. One is how much they admired the downtown and how much they admired all the wineries we have here in town. So I think we all should be very proud of what we've accomplished. Two other things. On January 11th, I am now part of the Altamont Landfill Community monitoring committee, so I attended that. And then on January 12th was a stopwaste.org meeting that I attended in Oakland. I have another one of those this week. They have a lot of meetings.
Appreciate you representing the city on those.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Warner.
Yeah, are all the meetings productive and not wasteful because they're stopping waste? Right?
But Jake.
Too late. So two things. One was the intergovernmental committee meeting on January 19th, and the one thing to come out of that that's worth mentioning, there was a question about local regulations regarding dogs off leash, and a request to align the various entities' rules along that. So I wanted to get consensus from the rest of you that, in fact, we would work with LARPD to make an alignment in our rules with respect to that.
Okay, sure.
So, and then the other also was a continued request in that meeting to get together the what are called overlay maps, so we can see what land is available for the public park use that all of the different entities have, and that we could have, once we have those maps overlaid, we can see what we have, and then we could also overlay on top of that where is the most need from the community, and we could begin to maybe think about that and have a little bit longer range planning than just happenstance. So then I also attended the Altamont Landfill and Resource Recovery Facility Open Space Advisory Committee, which is different than the monitoring committee.
We need more committees.
Right, but this one, as opposed to looking at what, how the landfill is being operated, this one is what can we do effectively with the money that we're getting for the mitigation for it being there. And we're making progress on being a little bit more proactive on trying to buy property. So we've got a lot of money in the bank, but we don't have a lot of land to buy. So we're going down the path of engaging a consultant to put together what's called a heat map, so where we can overlay the various biological resources and where strategically might be the good fit. And not to the point of pinpointing a particular parcel number and saying we want that, so much as just saying that we want to be able to allocate the dollars within the general region, and then consistent with that, when opportunities arise, and we've already made some prioritization on it. So, and again, I think that Livermore is going to be the lead for engaging with a consultant, but that's also going to come back to the various governing bodies for approval to go down that path. So those are the two things. So I would also like to get your consensus that we'll continue down that. That makes sense. Okay, well, that's it.
Planning tool. Vice Mayor Spadowski.
All right, I have 5 meetings to report and a couple matters initiated, so bear with me. I'll go as fast as possible. On the 11th, I attended the ARG, the Altamont Regional Rail Work Group. I don't know if I should report out on that. Technically, I'm the LAFTA appointee, but I'm appointed to LAFTA by the city, so it's kind of a weird end around, but anyway.
I'll be reporting on it too.
So there you go. We hired an executive director, which is very exciting, and I just wanted to point out, and I'm sure the mayor will emphasize as well, on February 9th, there is a BART Board of Directors meeting where they will be considering whether or not to support the formation of a JPA for the construction of BART out to Livermore. So if you care about BART to Livermore, if you care about connecting people eventually to the ACE rail line somehow and getting them off of 580, we need you to show up to that board meeting and thoroughly encourage the board members to form this JPA. Hopefully we can shave enough years off the construction so Mrs. King can see it completed. She mentioned earlier that she'll never see the BART line completed, but maybe we can do it. On the 13th, I was on the East Bay Community Choice Energy interview panel for consultants. We are now interviewing consultants for customer service, public outreach, and purchasing of the energy. As a reminder, this is the East Bay Community Choice Energy, which will launch. The first board meeting is on the 30th of this month, and it will be an alternate for power from PG&E for Alameda County residents, minus Newark and Pleasanton. On the 17th, I was at the Tri-Valley Transportation Council Finance Subcommittee meeting where we reviewed the annual audit and our banking options. And earlier today, I had the Tri-Valley Transportation Council board meeting where we reviewed the strategic plan for 2017 and also reviewed the 2008 Nexus study. And then I had a LAVTA Projects and Services committee where we reviewed our Dial-A-Ride, which is our paratransit services. They had a survey where the users rated the system 4.4 out of 5. So we're pleased with that. And also, the autonomous vehicle project is moving forward. So LAVTA is part of a pilot project which will provide autonomous vehicles to connect BART to an unspecified location in Dublin. So you will have potentially driverless vehicles. Just the brief details, they travel at 20, 25 miles an hour. I think it's more around 20, typically using bike lanes. So it's not zipping down the road at 50 miles an hour, or it could not be bike lanes. We don't know yet. But this is also the same project that they're considering in Bishop Branch in San Ramon. So it's a company that's working with several of the transit agencies to test out that darn connection between BART and the home. If we can figure out people to get that connection, yeah, it would help. Under matters initiated, I would like to consider directing staff to look at that downtown parking issue with the fee. Specifically, the specific plan encourages the removal of inefficient small parking spaces on certain lots around First Street. So if we can, at your earliest convenience, get a report, maybe providing some ideas where we can encourage the development of those inefficient parking spaces. On one hand, we have the downtown specific plan saying it would be great to get rid of some of these inefficient spaces, and then on the other hand, we're charging them a fee to get rid of the spaces. So I kind of sort of see the conflicting goals, and it would be nice to get some more information. Nope. Yes.
That sounds good.
So the request is for additional information and potential options that once council considers, that then they could give direction on which of those options they wished us to pursue and develop for your consideration. Very good.
Specifically to encourage the development of those spaces along First Street. And then the other, well, it's not a matters initiated. I'll just go ahead and mention it. I believe I mentioned it before, and we had a resident tonight talk about traffic enforcement, and I think that's going to be a great topic for our goal-setting workshop, specifically as somebody who spent 3 years with a radar gun and a tuning fork doing speed surveys. I know about the enforcement. I know that the speed limits are only as good as you're able to enforce them. So I think that's something that we definitely need to take a look at. That's it.
Okay. This will be quick because we're right at the witching hour. January 11th, I was at a Cal LAFCO retreat, California Local Agency Formation Commission, that was in San Jose. We worked on the policies, governance, and board responsibilities. Later that same day, I also was at the Altamont Regional Working Group in Tracy, and that was, again, talking about BART to Livermore and the concept of where that connection takes place, whether it's ACE going to BART or BART going to ACE. There's actually a discussion now of setting up the DMUs or EMUs, not the large bird, but the diesel or electrical mobile units to multiple units that work their way to make that connection to Isabel. And then later that same day, I was at the Alameda County Mayor's Conference in Oakland, one of those 200-mile days. Talking about emergency operations, and also was at the swearing-in of former mayor and now Judge Margaret Fujioka from the city of Piedmont. The following day, on the 12th, was the Cal LAFCO board meeting, where we took actions related to staffing, financing, and specific legislative advocacy. The 13th was an Innovation Tri-Valley retreat. I think I've done 4 retreats in less than a month, so I'm kind of running out of creativity. We focused on short and long-term goals, creating a regional brand, and exploring outreach and, again, advocacy. Then for the next week, I was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C., talking about best practices with a number of other mayors from around the country. As far as matters initiated, and I'll go into greater detail later, but it's late. Matters initiated, there's been a lot of concern about groundwater activities on the eastern side of town. I would like the staff to work on a letter drafted perhaps to go under my signature regarding the aquifer issue on the east side to specify that the water returned to the aquifer must be of a higher quality than the water that was removed, that there be no degradation of the water quality in any aquifer, that sufficient seals be maintained to ensure that no lateral contamination occurs within the overlying formation, that the water may not be returned under pressure in any manner similar to fracking, which is illegal in Alameda County, and that the water returned will not be substantially in excess of that which was removed. Does that kind of sound something we could support on that? Well, because we don't want them to force additional water under pressure into the aquifer in a manner similar to fracking.
No, why wouldn't it be less? You said it's not substantially
Right,
more
but
than.
this is to, again, counteract the concerns about fracking.
No, I know, but why wouldn't it be the water returned is?
Well, they
how
might
could it
add
be?
additional feed water to it.
Oh, okay.
So that's just the concern. There was concern about too much pressure in the aquifer.
No, I know that, yeah, too. I agree with that there was that concern. Well, the other thing about substantial, the first one about cleaner?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't it be cleaner? They're taking out the oil, right?
Right. But there were people that were concerned because it was originally defined as a wastewater product.
Right.
Because it is the water after the process.
Yes.
But in fact, it's actually to specify that it must be cleaner than the water that was,
Okay.
that was taken.
What about the salinity? There seemed to be some concern.
The salinity is 7,200 TDS, so it's very high TDS water, very high saline. So I wasn't going to address that.
Okay. But that was a concern of somebody that I.
Well, so anything under 10,000 TDS comes under federal protection. So there was. It's less than that, but the average TDS of the water that you're getting right now is about 500. So this is an order of magnitude greater. Okay, so we'll work on that. Comment period ends on Wednesday, so we can get that drafted out and for my signature. With that, I would like to adjourn the meeting in memory of really a woman that did some tremendous work in the community. She was frequently overshadowed by her husband because he was much louder and aggressive than she was. But Miriam Miller did a tremendous amount of work in the community, with the schools, with the children, and she recently passed, and she will be greatly missed. So I would like to adjourn this meeting in honor and memory of Miriam Miller. Thank you.